All right, Herp House Rock. We got Phillip Lietz from Arids Only, and he does a couple other things that we'll have to talk about, but he's on here. We're going to talk about some really cool animals, so stay tuned.
Cool.
Right.
So I'm not gonna lie to you, I didn't do my research this week at all. You came highly recommended by Ron St. Pierre, and we all have a lot of respect for that guy. And
right.
I think he selfishly wants us to talk about lizards and monitors more. So I think that's what put us here today. I don't really know shit about you. I'll be honest. I'm actually really looking forward to this.
Cool. Yeah.
You saw this. You said you watched the podcast, man. You know how we get rolling. I want to hear a little background, kind of get us on to work off. We'll go from there, bud.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so yeah, my name's Phillip Lietz. 34. I'm out of Denver, Colorado at the moment. Born in Connecticut. Been here since I was about 5 years old. Other than reptiles, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt competitor and instructor, and an illustrator, both for editorial and previously for games and film and in the concept industry. But the main thing I've been doing for the last 10, 15 years or so, that's just siphoning off ever more of my attention and time is reptiles, right? So I think what I specialize in most would be Uromastyx. That's just the genus that I just love those damn lizards, and for whatever reason they really do it for me. So I have lots of other side projects and stuff, but that's my main focus. I've been working with Euros kind of on and off since I was 16, but they I would say in the last 8 or 9 years have really just taken up the reins for what I do. That's what I spend most of my time doing. In the past, I spent a lot of time, like early on in my reptile interests and career, I was mostly, it was like dinosaurs, and then it was like bearded dragons. And then after that, I started working at a local reptile shop here in Colorado called Reptilian Haven, which was it was the first reptile store here in the state. And I was working there when I was about 16. And then I worked there on and off until I was about 25 or so. Maybe it was like 23. I can't remember the year that they closed, but I was there for a while. And while I was there, I got introduced to a lot of different guys who helped me expand my horizons as far as reptile keeping, what you could and couldn't keep, right? Like do you ever want to keep venomous? Do you just want giant snakes? I don't know. They're all pretty dope. So I tried a little bit of everything, right, for a long time, but eventually landed on Uromastics and a handful of other lizards.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, Denver, Colorado. Andy Watson.
Yeah.
Denver, Colorado. Much respect for him. Honestly, he's one of my favorite tables. Every time I'm at a Denver show, just the diversity he works with is fucking sick. And then you got Hippie Dave out there too.
Oh yeah. I know Dave. Yeah. I know both those guys, Andy and Dave. They're super cool, man. Andy's a great dude.
Ben and Ryan, you guys know Hippie Dave too. Skink Breeder Dave.
Yeah, I know. I don't really know him, but I've heard of him. And
I don't know what you're talking about right now.
You guys should be ashamed of yourself for being skink breeders to not know who Dave is.
In general, I am ashamed of myself, so thank you. But
that's okay. What a rough start. But honestly, Uromastyx. I think it was. You probably know the exact time when, but they stopped importing those guys for a little while, right?
Yeah. So the importation game with Uromastics is a sordid history, right? So I know that they've been imported for the pet trade for probably 50, 60 years or so, right? But unfortunately, they come from parts of the world that have historically been somewhat unstable, right? So parts of North Africa and the Mideast, and just probably through a mixture of changes in demand as well as their countries of origin, it leads to really, really sporadic and inconsistent importation groups. And then You couple that with the fact that Uromastics are very easily stressed. Like, I guess you take any animal out of the wild, it's going to freak them out, right? But
Sure.
with Uromastics, for whatever reason, it kills them seemingly a little bit faster than it can kill your average imported reptile. And so you mix inconsistent sporadic importation with low survival rate of those of the groups that do make it in, and then even lower numbers of those surviving individuals end up in breeding homes or are bred consistently. And so all of that coupled together just leads to just a very, very small number of them available generally. But that would be why their importation is kind of chaotic. And then I've heard rumors of the authorities confiscating a lot of Euros at the border in recent months. So I don't know if I don't really know the details as to how or why or what, but I do know that they are likely to be targeted for confiscation with some regularity, probably for a while. So we may not see many of them come in for a long time.
But they're legal to import, though, right?
Oh yeah, totally. Oh yeah, yeah.
Well, any market that you're limited on what we're allowed to bring in the country typically will bring the price up on an animal. It's happened with a lot of Indonesian animals. It's happened with a lot of Madagascar animals over the years.
Sure.
I find a species to be a little more unique when you can't get any more in.
Yeah.
I know we have a pretty diverse gene pool here. Like you said, we've been bringing them in the country for 50, 60 years. Your comment, too, about them being a little more sensitive and losing imports. One thing that a lot of people don't keep into consideration with importing is they don't go out and catch 20 and send them in. They have a quota.
Yeah,
and
totally.
In the process of getting their quota, they might let these things live in a 5-gallon bucket for 5 weeks with no water till they hit their numbers, and then they bag them all up and send them out. So
that's exactly right. Yes, sir.
That can be definitely tough on them. But, again, the one he showed earlier, and we have gone through some of your stuff, Uromastics really are, I don't even know the best way of putting it. They should be more appreciated than they are. I would take Uromastics over bearded dragons any day of the
week. Yeah, sure. I mean, look, I love bearded dragons as much as the next guy, right? But Uromastics certainly are extremely diverse, really, really intriguing, really beautiful. I mean, like that one there, that's a Moroccan, so that's a Nigroventris. I mean, and Nigroventris are great, but you get a good ornate, a good Yemenensis, McFadeni, Princeps thomasii. Those things are like desert jewels. I mean, they look like no other lizard out there. And so I agree with you that they do have a bit of an underappreciation, and some of it is a misunderstanding, right? One of the things you see a lot is one of the things I get most often from people who just ask me questions about Euros is, they'll say, "Oh, I got this Euro from a pet shop, and they told me to treat it like a bearded dragon." And okay, I get it. On a surface level, you could argue that they have some similarities in care, but the ways that they're similar are far fewer than the ways that they're different. And so I think that leads to a lot of mixed success from people. And therefore, that also leads to lower rates of survival with those few imports that do survive that collection process, as you were mentioning, tend to have pretty hard goes of it once they do get into permanent homes. Now, that can vary a little bit from species to species, but for the most part, they're all very, very prone to pretty high stress. Those are the thomasii there. Yeah, those are special. Those come from Oman. They're beautiful lizards.
Oh, from Oman. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they're super stunners, man. They're really interesting because they have this bizarre, like all Euros have like throat and chest color, but not a lot of them have just that bold stripe that goes right down the back. And all thomasii have that nice orange stripe, and they have this weird. Their chins it looks like a spit up. Like when you see a kid spit up like spaghetti sauce or something. They have whether the thomasii is blue or green, doesn't matter. But they'll get that color on their chest, and it's like a hard line. It sometimes stops. It looks like a bib under their chin. It's totally weird.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, oh man, as you know too, because you said you watch us hopefully more than just a couple times.
Oh yeah.
The goal really is to bring on new species because generally we don't all want to work with ball pythons.
Sure.
Yes, we do work with ball pythons, but it's not always the end goal. And with that being said, I want you to sell the idea of people wanting to work with Uromastics because, in all honesty, I do a lot of shows and a lot of traveling, and there is virtually never Uromastics at a show now that they're not being imported regularly. So break it down from the beginning, man. Let's go over some dieting stuff. Just kind of get us from top to bottom on it.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So that's actually a really good question because I actually personally, I think there's no better lizard to keep than a Uromastyx. Okay. So call me biased, but I think that even though they, much like other reptiles, they might have like a relatively high initial investment, right? Like you're getting the animal, the cage, the lights, whatever things, all that stuff you need might be like a little high, generally speaking. But we're talking about an animal that is virtually one of the lowest maintenance lizards I've ever encountered. They are herbivores. They don't have any need for insects whatsoever. They can eat a lot of dry foods. They actually are a little bit like tortoises without shells in a lot of ways. High desert, high heat, super tough. Don't eat a lot, even when they are in full swing for the season, like peak spring and summer. They don't eat a ton of food, right? Because they're high desert animals, they absorb just almost all the water that they get through their diet. Therefore, you don't need to keep a water bowl in the cage, but you can if you want to. You don't get any of the sloppy, messy shit that you get with I keep other species other than desert lizards, so I get it. Like I love other desert species, but what I love about Euros is they shit a pellet. You just pick up a pellet. It's the easiest cleanup in the world. You can leave them for days if you have to, right? Like I've gone away, and if you have a single up to 5 Uromastics, your lights on, timers, everything like that, you could leave dry food in the cage for a week or more, and you can come back and you'll have a happy, healthy, thriving animal that you didn't have to have somebody come and take care of. Not that you shouldn't get a babysitter when you go on vacation. I'm just saying, like, if you absolutely had to, they have very long lifespans. So the longest lived Uromastyx in captivity that I've ever heard of is a Moroccan Uromastyx, Uromastyx nigriventris, which was in either a German or Dutch zoo that was imported as an adult. And I think it lived like something like 55 years, 53, 55 years. So that's assuming that was a fresh adult. That's 3 years minimum when it was imported. And then it lived into the 50s in captivity. That's unbelievable. Tortoises are, at least for a lizard of that size, like I know iguanas and larger lizards and tortoises will all live a long time. But for, like a small, colorful lizard, that's a long life, right? They need super high temperatures. So this might be one downside is they tend to need more. You're going to need more than one heat lamp most of the time once you get up past a certain size of animal. That's just for overall general health. So some people can find that a little bit difficult because we're used to, one heat lamp and one UV strip. But that being said, also most of them stay relatively small. So other than a handful of the larger species, you're looking at 16 inches maximum, usually very, very brightly colored with just a few minor exceptions. And they are so intelligent and so fun to work with. They're sort of like less predatory monitor lizards in a lot of ways, where they're responsive to their keepers. They learn very, very, very quickly when you're bringing what food you're bringing, when you're bringing it. When you freak them out, they don't trust you for another 10 months, right? You have a tame animal, you scare it once, you rip it out of the hide when it didn't want to be pulled out of the hide or something like that. You might not see it for a week. But when they've been acclimated and they're very, very conditioned to where they are so fun and interactive. They're just the best. I think they're the best lizard pet out there, man. They're awesome.
So dabbling back to the diet and a little side question, you're talking about the very long lifespan. You're talking about the fact that they do more grazing than anything than just like solid eating. I mean, is this species, I take it has a very slow metabolism to be a desert animal and actually just not constantly jamming food in its face?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure. So they definitely, my animals in particular, except for babies under a year old, they're only getting greens 4 days a week, 5 days a week maximum, even in peak summer, because a lot of the in-between days, I like to offer different dry foods and different things that you can, flowers from outside, weeds, grass, stuff like that. You're right about their metabolism, and in Uromastyx, just as in lots of different reptiles in the hobby, we see obesity issues. This is very, very common. We see metabolic problems in a lot of Uromastyx. So you hit on something very important there. They are relatively low metabolism lizards, and therefore really don't need that much food all the time. And so, and especially bugs. This is a really controversial topic, at least within the Uromastyx community. You get a lot of people who say you just never give them bugs, it's hard on their kidneys, and then you got this other camp that yells, it's, well, once in a while it's okay. And the reality is that once in a while it's okay. They're just it's just bugs, right? You can give them a few bugs, preferably mealworms, every once in a while, but I don't really give them to them hardly at all. So with repeated years of breeding and without any real insect matter to speak of, they clearly don't need bugs, but they can get them. And but to touch on the metabolism thing one more time, which is, again, as I mentioned before, these are high desert lizards. They get all their water from, or at least they'll get the majority of the water that they need from their diet, right? One of the big issues that I see all the time with Euro keepers is they feed way too many dry and processed foods. This could come in the form of dry lentils or dry seeds, which I think are completely unnecessary. This could come in the form of processed foods such as any of the Zoomed Exo Repcal brand iguana and tortoise foods that they make. Great foods, great additions to the diet, but really kept to a minimum. You got to keep it on the smaller end in terms of portions, because we see there's a lot of dehydration concerns and overfeeding of those processed foods. Bee pollen as well is another. It's not processed, but it's a small dry treat, right? So I see a lot of people who give this stuff multiple times a week, sometimes daily for some of those things, and I think that those foods in particular should be kept 15% or less of their overall diet should be, maybe 20% at the most of their overall diet should consist of those drier and processed foods. And they're great treats, and they're great for helping tame the Euro and start. You can do like target training, and I've got a stone in every cage where I put treats on that stone all the time, whether it's some kind of dry or processed food or bee pollen or something. And the Euros know, they learn it. They get in the habit. They see me walk by their pen and they come flying, and they're like, wait right in front of that rock. They know what's going on. So it's very tempting for people to feed it all the time, but that stuff, it ends up slowing their digestion down slower than it ought to go. And I see a lot of blockages and dehydration problems, especially in younger Uromastyx that come from the high volume of those dry foods. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's pretty important to me.
Are there other ways to get extra hydration in?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a really good question. So I do a couple things for that. You can double up on a treat and make the treat a hydration opportunity. So for example, there's a dry food that I get from tortoisesupply.com that they make it for tortoises, but it's perfect for Euros as well. And I use they're like these little pellets. You could treat it just like a tortoise. You soak the pellets and then use that as your opportunity to give it to your Uromastyx. Give it once every 2 weeks. That's a great opportunity for hydration. Sometimes as it gets into the slower season, when they're not breeding and trying to be active and grow constantly, I'll feed them every third day or something, like some rough routine of every third day. But on that third day, part of what I give them might be just like one whole chunk of romaine or something like that, romaine or green leaf, a very watery, maybe it doesn't have the great nutritional content, but it has a ton of water. So that's something I'll do, especially for gravid females, little babies, things like that. And so what I'll do is I'll take that long strip of lettuce, and instead of chopping it up and offering it to them in a salad bowl, I'll take either like a hook or something like that, and either hang it from somewhere in the cage, or I will place the base of the leaf underneath a stone on top of another stone, so that way the leaf hangs off, and that way the Euros will come around all day long and graze on that leaf. And they don't just eat the green part; they chew it all the way down to the stem, and they'll bite into the stem and get big chunks of watery stem, depending on the type of plant. You can give them cactus pads, like spineless cactus. They will eat it. They don't go bananas for it, most of them, but they will eat a handful of bites, and that's just packed full of water and moisture. You can, if you want to, you can soak them. This is another super controversial topic for some reason. Everybody thinks it's going to kill a desert lizard to soak it in water, which is just horseshit. A smart desert lizard is going to seek out water, right? So you can soak them, but it's just not something you want to do all the time, because it's just not something that they would get a lot of interaction with in the wild, and they hate it. Right? They do not like being put in hot water. It's just, or warm water, I guess. Even they don't like it at all. So, also another thing you can do is I said you don't have to keep a water bowl in the cage, but every once in a while I will put, like those Talenti ice cream, that ice cream you get at the store, Talenti. I eat a lot of that, so I save the lids. Yeah. So I save the lids because they're a really nice shallow dish. I clean them out, and I'll put those in the cages every once in a while and walk by with the sprayer and just spray that little Talenti lid until it's full. And 90% of the time they don't bother. But, 10% of the time, some of the species, Yemenensis, Princeps, nigroventris, they will come and drink from that. And I've heard people say that about every species of Euro out there. So it's not that you can't put a water bowl, but like a big water bowl that they can soak in is probably meaningless in a Uromastyx cage. Of course, if it's an enclosed cage, you don't want to have super elevated humidity levels with some giant water bowl, right, in a desert lizard's cage. But it's not a big concern. So those are some ways you can get them hydrated for sure.
Are there any vegetables? Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
I was just curious if you do any supplementation.
Yeah, great question. So I have a really loose something that I kind of like. I like the way I like to talk about it is I do a lot of things by feel. I know that a lot of people can get a little bit of the engineers or mathematicians mindset where they want to know, I want to know the length and weight of your lizard and at exactly what age, and I want to know like exactly how many days, what portion of what foods, and what mixes, what ratios are you using. And I love that. There's a great place for it, but that's not the way I tend to do things. So when it comes to supplementation, generally speaking, with animals older than a year, the only supplementation they get comes from what is already contained in the dry foods that that I'll feed them, like whether it's the tortoise foods or the reptile foods, that it's the processed foods that they'll get a couple times a month. That supplementation they'll get, but it's pretty rare. Maybe 3 days, 4 days out of the month, I've put, I'll just think about it, and I'll take the calcium without D3 and multivitamin, some kind of multivitamin supplement, and I'll sprinkle it on their greens. I don't like to do it that way though, most of the time, because the Uromastics are really, really sensitive to particulates on their salad. Right. So if you put powder, especially of certain consistencies, on wet greens, they will come over, they'll eat it and they'll bite it and everything, but you can tell they don't want that powder on the food. I don't know if it's like a textural thing for them. They don't like it. I don't know if it's taste. I don't know if it's a mixture of both, but they clearly do not like it. So what I tend to do now, especially for gravid females and babies under a year old, is I will use like a treat mixture that varies in ingredient, and I mix it up myself. So it'll be some concoction of ground up tortoise chows of different brands, dried flour and vegetable mixes of different brands, Timothy hay, and what I add into that is the mineral indoor formula, the with D3 formula, and I'll mix that. It's like a powder, and I'll mix it up into a really dry powdery mixture. And I actually just take pinches of it and set it in different places on the inside their enclosure. So I have a lot of different surface areas and a lot of different textures in every enclosure. And so I'll just choose one at random, and I'll just put a pinch of it on, on a stone or something like that. And the Euros, every age, every species, all year round, they know it, they find it, they eat it, and it's really reliable. So again, I don't do it on a regular schedule. Some of that's just my personality type, and some of it's really outlandish thinking on my part, which is that it's probably good for them to get inconsistent feeding and inconsistent amounts, sometimes they get way more and sometimes they get way less. And, and obviously there are ways we can talk about timing that seasonally in order to try to stimulate different, breeding behavior and stuff like that. But sorry, very long-winded answer to supplementation.
That's fine, man. Fill in time.
Cool. Yeah.
So same thing with that. So you have a pretty diverse diet, even down to your treats, in my opinion. Now, how much of that was designed in-house, or did you got to take a little bit from everyone else and kind of came up with what worked for you?
Oh man, excellent. Yeah. So mostly the latter. Okay. So I was really fortunate to come up at a time when a lot of work had been done before me by gentlemen such as Douglas Dix, Lindsay Pike, Tom Greb, a handful of other guys who spent a lot of time figuring out Euros early on. Oh, and of course, Burt Langerworth, right? The man, the myth, the legend, right? He was the one doing Moroccans outside. He's the man. But so I spent years and years and years trying out every kind of food that has ever been recommended to give to your Uromastyx. Early on, I fed him everything. I fed him seeds and lentils and every dry food imaginable and every flour, and I gave him bugs like every week and all this. I went through a lot of iterations, but eventually, again, I kind of said I go by feel. I kind of started noticing that if I gave them, the ones that I gave excess amount of dry food to, or like if I just tried to feed them all the time and pump them full of food, it became pretty obvious. They get sluggish, they'd get lethargic, they'd get tired. Sometimes they wouldn't breed as well, whatever, all the different bizarre occurrences that can happen when you're overdoing it with food, So eventually I just started looking more at what other long-term, very successful keepers and breeders were doing. And I noticed just like a relatively simple setup, right? There was very simple concepts. It's like you maybe have your base 10 food items that you have easy access to, that the animals reliably eat and that are available wherever you are. And then you have everything kind of outside of that, right? You have all these different potentials, and I try new things all the time. So, and eventually I just realized that all of my animals do much better when they just get the widest variety of greens I can offer, and then occasional treats of really high value, really high calorie foods. They just do very well that way. And I, try not to mess too much when they're doing well and they're happy. I'm like, good, you do you. If I start seeing any kind of health problem, right? If I start seeing when they're sluggish, when they shouldn't be, right? So we're not talking about winter, fall or early spring. If they're sluggish during spring and summer, I might be doing something wrong. And I tend to approach it kind of like I'm an athlete, right? I Brazilian jiu-jitsu and stuff. So usually if I'm feeling shitty, it's probably because I'm eating a bunch of shit I shouldn't be. You know what I mean? So I kind of try to take that same principle and apply it to the Uromastics. So, most tortoise people, that's what they do, right? They're just getting really high quality greens and vegetables, if they can, wild foods, and then occasional treats with dry tortoise foods, right? Maybe they're soaked. And Euros are pretty much the same as that. They do very, very well on that. And you see, I get no obesity and no, none of those things that you see in some of those fat pet Euros, which it's cute, I guess, but I don't want it in any of mine, So that's a good question, but I guess maybe a more specific answer would be a mix of the two. So a lot of my initial knowledge was based on people who came before me that I'm really, really grateful for. And then some of it's just been through experimenting myself. I go out to Arizona and Southern California all the time. I go out and herp, look for my favorite things to go look for out there are chuckwallas, collared lizards, desert iguanas, leopard lizards, right? Some of the larger North American diurnal desert lizards. I just love them. And chuckwallas and Uromastyx have a very, very similar ecological niche, or at least a lot of Uromastyx inhabit a very similar habitat as chuckwallas, So when I've been out there in the field with some of my friends, I just pay attention to what's going on around me. Like where are we finding the animals? What time of day? In what kind of hide? And what kind of plants do I see around, And I kind of mimic that, when you go out there in the spring and the summer, you might see 30 different plants around that they can eat. But then you go out there in October or November, there's nothing. It's bare ass desert with not a plant anywhere. You see seed pods or dry turds from other animals, but you see nothing, right? So I've also taken some of those experiences and tried to use that to inform the way I care for my animals, because they're pretty similar.
Is there any vegetables you would say to people should stay away from? Like, I don't know, like something like cucumbers, maybe that's too watery or.
Yeah. So, absolutely. So generally speaking, you should just stick with leafy greens as best you can. Leafy greens of all kinds. Those should be 90% of your of the diet for your Uromastyx. If you you can give them things like butternut squash and like winter squashes, winter gourds, some select herbs. All of those things are great, but you got to keep it to a relative minimum. I would try to just encourage people that 90% of the diet should consist of greens. Okay, so but greens you might want to avoid, absolutely. A lot of the members of the cruciferous family, so you don't want like kale. You can give a little bit of kale, just not a lot. Kale, mustard greens are okay in sort of limited quantities. I tell people all the time, don't bother feeding any spinach at all. You're basically looking to try to avoid certain mixtures of greens that are super high in oxalates, right? So they're not a major problem all the time, but it's definitely worth limiting. I try to tell people don't bother feeding them fruit, because they come from the desert, man. They're not eating anything out there that's fruity, not even close. But I know people who give them a blueberry here and there, and that's probably fine. But probably avoid fruits, minimize vegetables that are not greens for the most part, and maximize flowers. Like if you can get, oh man, flowers, I'm telling you. So I give tons of different flowers to my Uromastyx, mostly because I can grow them in the yard, or they're just easily available here for whatever reason. So hollyhock, specifically, they'll eat both the blooms and the greens from that. But so at my mom's house, she's got, because I made her plant them, tons of huge hollyhocks that come back every year. And so there have been seasons where for 2 or 3 months, from about June, July, August, sometimes into September, almost all they eat is hollyhock flowers. Like, just because I can get them, because there's hundreds of them in the backyard. So I just pick them, and I'll just every day, and they're a really prolific plant. And so they bloom all the time, and they bloom every day, tons of big blooms. So I'll feed tons of that. Nasturtium, dandelion, hibiscus, clover. There's actually a really great resource called it's the tortoisetable.org.uk. They have an excellent resource. It's a great reference site for edible plants. And so you just type in the name of whatever plant you're curious about, and it'll tell you, like, don't feed in moderation, feed all the time, whatever. It's a great resource. I use that myself, because sometimes I can find some flowers out here, and sometimes I can't find any. It just depends on the season. Oh yeah, there you go. That's my shop.
I really like the setup you have for this, man. That's really cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I gotta be upfront about this. When I was putting all this together, and when the idea for the kiddie pools kind of came to light, I was really hesitant for like probably 2 or 3 weeks. I was like, no, come on, because all I could think of was, I'm going to put this up on the internet and people are going to be like, what is this? This looks like trash. And, oh man, like, why would you, this is cheap and shitty. And it's like, don't you hate that they're blue? And no shit. I took a jigsaw. I just took a jigsaw and cut the bottom out of one. So if you zoom in, the edges on the tops of the pens are just, they're, wonky and wobbly and jagged and everything. But I mean, you got to do what you got to do in a pinch, right?
So how many Euros are you keeping in each one of those setups?
So I'm solo. All the Euros are solo.
Oh.
1 euro per pen. And then this is half of 2/3 of my shop. So I don't have any pictures of it anywhere, but basically on the viewer side of the picture. So, to the bottom left in the photo, there's a whole nother room that's roughly half the size of the room that is in the picture right now. And so I have other Euros and other animals in that room as well. It's just, I can't take a picture of it all at once. The camera's not big enough.
Right.
So yeah, I keep them solo. Uromastics. Okay. So it's my opinion that Uromastics really ought to be solo reptiles. At least with regard to keeping them indoors for a long period of time. I can't speak to if you kept them outside, how things might be different, because we all know that some reptiles, you keep them indoors, they're one way. You keep them outside, it's a different ball game altogether, right? Especially with a sufficient cage size. But in my experience, even though I should caveat that with one more thing, there are lots of really, really great guys who disagree with me. Right. I've got a couple of good friends in Europe, Camille Hammers and Oliver, this guy, Oliver Bebesaurus. They keep their Euros in pairs for as long as they can. Right. So they try. Yes, they may have spare cages open and available all the time to split animals if they have to. But generally speaking, these things fight like no one's business. They hate being kept with each other. And even though some of those fights don't always result in really high injury, it becomes a cumulative thing. It's like a death by 1,000 cuts sort of thing. So what ends up happening is you might get, the animals might be fine for a year or two. And then, you might get one that all of a sudden out of nowhere just drops weight. Right. And it's like, I haven't seen it in 5 days. Let me go check on it. And then you go look and this animal's like, it's skinny, it's lost weight, something's wrong. And I hypothesize that is a buildup of long-term internal injury and scar tissue. So in babies, this same kind of, which remind me to talk about this in a second. So in babies, I think that actually ends up being fatal. But with older animals, it ends up being a long-term problem. So even people who get their animals that they're keeping in pairs or trios to breed, most of the people who insist on keeping them in pairs might see inconsistent results. They might get 1 or 2 years of good breeding, and then they have animals take a couple years off, or maybe they get a year of good breeding, and then the next year they don't breed at all, and then the third year the female lays eggs when the male wasn't even ready to breed, and it's or you get lowered fertility rates. You get a clutch of 15, and 6 of them hatch. I absolutely insist on keeping my Euros alone for 90% of the year. And the only time I put them together is for supervised mating introductions and short-term like enrichment sessions, right? It's like, I mean, they should see each other once in a while. That we all want to see people sometimes, right? So sometimes, not all the time, right? So and by that, an enrichment session might be me putting 2 males together with a piece of plexiglass in between so they can't hurt each other. Sometimes it might mean me letting them fight for just a teensy short few seconds and then splitting them up, just because I think it's good for them, right? It would happen in the wild. It's probably something that happens more often than I let it happen, but it's it's probably good to do. And especially, in the breeding season, putting 2 males together can piss them off and fire them up, get them ramped up. So when you put a female in there, he's extra ready to go, right? But the other thing is when you keep them together, it's just going to add up long. You always have one animal that's eating a little less or not coming out when it should be. And this is even in situations like some of those pools that I have, they're huge. They're big 6-foot diameter pools. I have big ponds. My Egyptians are in 8-foot by 5-foot long pens, big pens.
Wow.
And I don't care how many basking areas you give them or how many hiding places you give them, you're going to see problems, right? At least, and again, this is within the context of indoor keeping, right? So, I honestly, it's, I mean, like our mutual friend, Ron St. Pierre, right? He keeps,
I was about to bring him up.
yeah, right. I'm sure if he gets Euros and puts them outside and keeps them in pairs, he'll do fine. But but again, it's a different context. Outside in a larger cage is totally different than indoors with limited resources. I've tried everything. I've tried, you give them as many hides as they can possibly imagine, give you 3-4 different basking areas separated by big visual barriers. It doesn't matter. They'll find each other. They'll bicker. They'll fight. The scent of one will keep the other one from coming out. And in adults, again, it's a long-term thing, but in babies, it'll kill them. With baby Uromastics, again, I said I keep all my Euros solo, except for the babies, right? It's really impractical to keep an entire clutch of babies completely separate. It's really a pain. So what I've noticed is around 4 weeks of age, which is when the Uromastics usually of most species is going through their first shed. What happens is they might have been living peacefully up until that point, but when they shed, they'll walk around. You see lizards walk around when they're shedding and, they brush up against stuff or they flick their tail against something. All lizards do this to try to rid their bodies of shed, right? Well, it just so happens that within Euros, and I'm sure within other lizards too, that happens to be really, really aggressive body language. So you get a whole clutch of babies that's all starting to shed and they're brushing up against each other. I see spikes in aggression during that 1 week time when they're all shedding and then clearing it off. Usually after that week passes and they've all gone through a shed, the aggression subsides a little bit, but it stays perpetually higher than it was before. So at that point, I split the babies into groups of 3 to 5. And sometimes I have to split them into solo groups because small species such as Uromastyx thomasi and Uromastyx princeps, which are both very small, the aggression, you'll see these bite marks that end up along the side of an individual. And all too often, the animal with the highest number of bite marks on its side ends up getting impacted because, and again, this is a theory, but I think what's going on is they're either pinching internal organs or creating a buildup of scar tissue that impinges on an internal organ. So, and what that ends up doing is that animal, if it doesn't heal in sufficient time, it croaks. It doesn't happen with that many, but we're talking 3 or 4 a year, but they're always the ones that have this extra bite on the side. They're just getting bit all the time along their flanks. And I don't think they're ready to handle that until they're older. Anyway, yeah.
Okay. So what kind of enclosure are you keeping the babies in once you break them into smaller groups?
So I use hotel pans. I was at the Denver Zoo. My buddy Troy is one of the keepers there, and he was being really kind to show me on a tour. And one of their, it was either a fish or amphibian guy, had these beautiful little tubs, and they were like the perfect size. They're like about 2 feet wide and 2.5 feet long, and roughly 10 inches deep. And I was like, oh man, that's like perfect size. They're heavy duty, they're clear, or they're white. That's exactly what I want. Turns out they were hotel pans for, the restaurant industry, basically. So I use those and I keep them on baker's racks, and they're stacked three high. So I end up with about 9, anywhere between 9 and 12 individual little pens on one rack. So it's a lot like, the way people keep baby bearded dragons, but in small groups. The only difference is temperature, I think, because the Euros are way, way hotter, at least at the baby scale. So that's what I do when I split them. But before that, I'm keeping them in 55-gallon Rubbermaid totes. That's just a great size for most clutches. The only ones I can't keep in that size are like Egyptians. They're too big. Those things pop out massive. So I keep them in a 4-foot Laguna Laguna tub, or Waterland, Laguna. I think it's Laguna, the big black, it's like meant for turtles and stuff, right? So I use that for those. But then some of them, you got like Yemenensis and Ornata. They're climbers. They love to climb super high. So for those, I'll put them in the big Laguna tubs as well, because I can stack stone up really, really high. And when I give them more vertical space, the ornates anyway, it tends to drop the aggression just a little bit. And they're just as bad as any other. But if I can find a way to get them to chill out for just a little while, it's a win in my book.
So, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ben. I'll come right back. You're good.
What kind of substrate do you use? Is it different for the babies, or is it? Adults? Do you keep everything on? Because people are like, "Oh, don't put this species on sand," because
right. Yeah. Okay. So, also another awesome question. I have a lot of thoughts about this. So, the first question is, my babies, I keep them on paper towel, but that's not because of fears of impaction. That's because of ease of cleaning. I want my Euros to be tame by the time I send them out to somebody, and I really want to interact with them all the time. So if I keep them on paper towel, that forces me to get in there every day, every other day, pull all their shit out, roll up the paper towels, and like play with them. I take them all out. I inspect them. I get pretty acquainted with each animal, even when I have a lot of them. So I do that. With that said, I have in the past put fresh hatchlings right on sand and gravel. I have done that before. I don't buy any of this bullshit about the substrate, except in rare cases being the cause for impaction, right? Like if you're putting your lizard on damn crushed walnut, or some of these sands and clay things that are meant to like turn into concrete, when you form them. Yeah, of course that's going to fuck with your lizard, right? I mean, imagine if what I'm talking about, those substrates that are meant to make like caves and stuff. Look cool, but that's cement, man. You think if your Euro eats that, it's not going to do the same thing in its gut? Like, come on, But when we're just talking about sand and gravel, like clay sand and gravel, it's totally fine. They're great. I have gone through lots of different phases of keeping my Euros on different stuff. There were years when I tried Sandy chips, and way, way, way back in the day, I kept them on birdseed, but that's a bad news. Don't do that anymore. But that's old school. That's old school.
It sounds expensive.
Yeah. Well, actually, birdseed's relative, like the millet, it made sense. It was like relatively cheap. It's non-toxic. They eat it, and it's easy to clean in some respects. But I hate it because they can't get any traction on it. When they try to walk on it, it's like no traction. They just sink right into it. So that can't be good long-term for physical health, right? And then the other thing is, when I've received animals from people who keep them on birdseed, they are shitting millet for weeks. Like, and you're like, dude, I don't give them any millet. So the fact that there's still millet coming out of them, I mean, that just sounds like bad news as far as I'm concerned. I mean, occasional millet as a treat is fine. It's great. The roughage is good for them, but just not much, right? So for ease, I stick with sand. It's just a mix of play sand and gravel, pea gravel from Home Depot. But I also, I buy this stuff. It's called Rock on a Roll. It's meant for koi ponds. It's like a pond line. It's a rock mimicking pond liner. So, people, like dig a hole for a pond, and then they put that black plastic liner down. And then on top of that, they'll put this Rock on a Roll stuff. It comes in big sheets. It's non-toxic. It doesn't off-gas anything. It's waterproof. It's heat resistant. And it's actually pretty easy to scrub clean. So I think that's a great alternative. I started using that years ago when I was using stacked cages, because it allowed me to have something that the Euros could get traction on, and was relatively natural looking, but was not heavy, right? So if I was using tile or slate or gravel or sand, it would weigh down all my cages. And then, you try to slide the glass, and it's like, and it shatters sometimes. I hated that shit. So I just started using that just in an effort to reduce waste. But I really, really liked the way the animals exist on it because it doesn't have any dust and it's really, really easy to clean. So I could spray it with Chlorhex if I wanted to. I could steam clean it if I pulled the whole thing out. If you pull the whole thing out, the liner out of the cage, you could put it in the dishwasher and just let it rip and you're fine. And it lasts for years and years and years. So it's an excellent material. In recent years, I have not stuck to that exclusively because I've wanted to give my animals more variety in terms of their substrate. So I will have pens where half of it is this, rock on a roll pond liner, which is that stuff. That's exactly what that your ornate is on, is pond liner. And then the other half of the cage will be the sand and the gravel. And then just in the last 2 years, what I've been doing is I've been cutting the rock on a roll into longer strips and sheets, and I will lay it on and under stones and sticks, right? So, man, I should have had a picture of this ready, but basically if you can imagine, say you got 5 rocks and they're all stacked up, right? This rock liner, I'll put it over one rock and then put another rock on top of that so it's held in place. And then I'll put, it's unfortunately it's not in this one either. That's egg crate in the back, but basically imagine a rock stack like that, but with that rock mimicking pond liner just sort of interlaced or interwoven in and among the features. So what it creates is really, really variable hide sizes. So, they can go and cram themselves and get right under in a crevice and right under a rock and be safe, right? It's also really easy to clean. So I think that stuff is really cool, and it can add a lot of, it would be as if egg crate was made of a rock substitute. You know what I'm saying? So I just think it's awesome. It's the best stuff ever. I've just ordered a whole bunch more of it. It's the best material. It's really good. And I've been using it in the winter to cover some of the different cages, because in that shop I have really high ceilings, and so I lose a lot of heat to temperature, to overhead space. So I've been covering some of the pens with that rock on a roll pond liner to help keep hot air in some of the enclosures during the day.
Going back to the hotel pans.
Yeah.
You were saying stacking the hotel pans, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Those are those clear polycarbonate Rubbermaid ones.
You got it.
Are these guys, do you put light or UV or anything on his babies, or is it just under the tub heat?
No, it's overhead, but they're stacked on baker's racks. So, if the tub is 10 inches tall, that particular shelf is going to be 20 inches tall. And I just hang light over the top. And then I have one UV strip that goes across all the pens in one row. So that way I don't have to put a UV light on every single cage. That would just be obnoxious. But that's how,
Clutch sizes across the board. I'm sure different ones are going to have different sizes. Who's got your small clutch and who's got your big clutch?
Sure. So probably the smaller clutches are either going to win. It's going to be Thomasi, Princeps, or Philbii. These species I've had as few as 5 in a single clutch. And then, but even within those, I had a female Princeps this year lay a clutch of 16 eggs. That's big for a little species of lizard. Most of my Uros of all species for the first, I'd say 2 to 3 years of breeding, they lay one clutch of anywhere from 8 to 12, sometimes 14 eggs. It's usually not until the 3rd, 4th, or 5th year that I start seeing clutch sizes over 14. I'm sure that has something to do with accumulation of fat, or just extra growth. Right. But I have some animals that still, even after years, of breeding, only lay, I had a female Thomasi, she's bred for 9 years. And I think she had 1 year where she laid 14 eggs, but every year before that, it's either been 10 or 12 every single year. So the bigger clutch sizes are going to come from species like Flavifasciata, Nigra ventris, Ornata, and Egyptia. So the biggest clutch I've had from an ornate so far has been 23. But I do know a guy, my friend Camille over in the Netherlands, he had a female ornate that laid like 30 some one year. It was just like,
Wow.
total, and it was a total anomaly. That's a big outlier, you know. That's a pretty big outlier. I have also heard of, I believe, nigroventris. Mine haven't laid anything more than 16 in a clutch, but I do know that some nigroventris are known to lay like 24, 25 eggs in a clutch. That can happen. And then Egyptians as well. Egyptians can sometimes lay larger clutches. Although my Egyptian, this year was the first year I bred Egyptians, and she laid I think 14 eggs and popped one, and then one or two of the eggs croaked in incubation. So just, you know, she'd like poked a hole in it with her claw or her tail. So that's what you're looking at in terms of average. And then the majority of Uromastics, just single clutchers per year, just one. So this actually ties back to what we were talking about before with availability, right? So these animals lay one clutch a year, and they usually take about somewhere at the very, very minimum 3 years to hit sexual maturity, but usually you're looking at 5 years to sexual maturity. So small clutch sizes and low reproductive number, or I mean, a relatively long wait to get to reproductive age leads to fewer animals on the market available. But there are two species that I know for a fact definitely double clutch, which is Princeps and Thomasi. They will occasionally lay 2 clutches in a year. I don't recommend it. Usually, one of the 2 clutches tends to have a lower fertility rate, and then oftentimes if you've ever seen a Uromastyx when it lays eggs, they look like garbage. They look like the most deflated balloon wrapped around a lizard skeleton you've ever seen. They just look like shit. So I can't imagine having them double clutch is any good for them at all. Maybe in the future I might change my mind on that. Maybe I'm not doing something nutritionally, something like that. But all the other species, as far as I know, only lay a single clutch a year. I've heard rumors of Saharan Uromastyx, so Uromastyx gayi, and Uromastyx ocellata. I've heard rumors of them occasionally double clutching, but never seen it myself, so can't confirm.
Okay.
Hey.
Yeah.
We got a hand in here, Ben. Respect it. Go ahead, Ryan.
I know we kind of like cruised right on past this point, but like you were talking about how you do enrichment where you put 2 males together with plexiglass and they may battle, or you keep babies together until 4 weeks and they go through their shed, and then a little bit of aggressiveness shows up in the animals because, you know, naturally in nature that might be a body posture that would trigger that. How important do you think are those hormonal triggers in the development of the animals and making sure that they're healthy and have a high fecundity rate?
Sure. You know, that's a great question. I don't really know yet. I'm not sure that is a question that could be answered by anybody out there quite yet, because they haven't been in captivity long enough. I don't have, you know, but I can safely say I do quite a bit of experimentation with that. So sometimes I will take young animals and put them in supervised, very closely supervised with an older animal, right? Because there are some, I've heard conjecture, you know, kind of out there in the ether that so Uromastics tend to be sexually dimorphic, certain species and to a certain degree. And one of the theories behind why in captivity we tend to see a lot of male mimic females, or females that are higher color or take on more masculine secondary sexual characteristics, is because if you're keeping them apart, they might not get exactly what you were saying, some different hormonal triggers with regard to color development or body development or some of these things. Now, this is pure speculation. I just want to say I don't have any scientific backing for this. This is all just conjecture for the time being. But so I you know, I don't know if that's 100% true yet. I've got a lot of females that I have introduced to males for years. They are still very, very, very high color. And then I have some animals that never have been with a male before and just look the most quintessentially female Uromastyx you've ever seen. I think, I would like to add something to what I said about the baby aggression really quick. I know this is a bit of a divergence. I have ADD, so my bad. But the baby aggression is not, I don't think it's exclusively caused by that initial shed that leads them to do a lot of extra brushing up against each other. I do think that the idea is that because these guys come from such a sparsely vegetated part of the planet, as the season changes towards, as they get closer and closer towards fall, there's probably a lot more pressure on, if a clutch hatches and they all share the same, 100 square foot or, 1 mile stretch of land, they probably chase each other out of their territory just to ensure, it's probably an evolutionary mechanism that ensures that each animal has access to enough food, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas if they were letting everyone, if we're just, we'll all just hang out in the same pit and they all eat the food and then they all starve to death, right? It doesn't make any sense. So I just want to be clear that I think that's why the babies show aggression so early. I just think that the shedding kind of adds to it. I just wanted to just add that in there at the end. But as far as hormonal development, I don't know. I do think that with breeding Uromastyx, oftentimes the males are pretty relaxed and pretty uninterested until the first time I throw a female in the cage, right? Like the temperature cycling and the food cycling, yeah, it affects their behavior, but it's not until the first couple of times I throw a female in there that all of a sudden the males they're out all day long. They're super bright color all day long. They're hot all day long. They're running around doing push-ups and everything. There are some animals that during the breeding season, I can put my hand in the cage and they'll try to mate with my hand, and you're like, Jesus Christ. But then later in the point. Yeah, for sure. It's hilarious. And then except when it's an Egyptian, because then it hurts. My male Egyptian's an asshole. I just want to point that out. He's awesome. He's the best dude ever, but he's a total dick. But so there are obviously some hormonal stuff that happens in lizards as the season picks up. The other thing is I don't introduce them in the off season. So after the summer's over, I don't put males back in with females. I don't put babies in with adults, none of that stuff, because I don't want to trick them because it's about to get cold, especially here in Colorado. We just got hit 2-3 weeks ago with, man, it was like 90 one day. And then the next day it dropped down to 30. I mean, yep. it was crazy. It was just an insane temperature change. So, I don't want to introduce animals later in the year and confuse them about what's going on. I love to keep them separate for as long as I can. So that way, when spring comes around and I throw pairs together, they just get jacked up and ramped up on it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good question though. I wish I had a better answer, but.
Yeah, next time.
Yeah, next time for sure.
You got Ben? Is that a question on your face, or what are you doing there?
Of course, I have a few in the tank.
Go ahead.
Kind of going off of what Dave was saying earlier about trying to sell these, why people should have them. Which, by the way, I really do like Uromastyx.
Can I just interject? I want to get on the list for some ornates, please.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's a list, but if there is, I want on it, please.
I'll help you out, man. No problem.
We were in Canada and we saw a guy had melanistic Uromastyx, and they're almost jet black, but then they had a bit of a red belly, I think, and a couple spots that were like
orange or yellow. Yeah, sure.
But I mean, dope, man. Like super awesome looking. They're really cool.
Yeah,
I like them, and to sell them. So one thing that people want to know is like, what are these? Couple things. What do these go for? Yeah, like roughly. Okay. How long do you have to keep them until you can sell them?
Okay.
Like, what point do you do that? And like, is it easy to ship them, or is it easy to like get them in certain states, things like that? Like, what does that market look like for this?
Yeah. So as far as the market goes, I'll just say I can't produce enough of them, frankly. Like I get messages every single day, all day long, especially for ornates in particular. Understandably so. They're gorgeous. I'm sorry, I kind of lost track of a few of those questions. So I know you asked how long do I keep them before I sell them. So it depends a little bit on the species. So some of the smaller species have to grow for a little bit longer time before I can ship them, because they don't handle being jostled around that well, right? So Thomasii and Princeps, I keep 8 to 10 weeks, just just until they hit a certain size. Although most of the other species that are larger, so nigroventris, Dispartus bar, Maliensis, Flavifasciata, Egyptia, Ornata, I have no problem shipping those at about 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes a little bit longer. It just depends a little bit on how quickly they grow and when I feel like they're an appropriate size to be shipped. So usually you're looking at, 4 inches or so, give or take, unless it's an Egyptian, which they hatch at 4 freaking inches long. They're huge. So maybe not those. Those wait until they're a little bigger. And then, yeah, I'm not familiar. I don't know of any laws anywhere that you can't have, unless you can't keep reptiles in that particular state or something like that. You can keep Uromastyx anywhere. They're totally harmless and non-venomous. They do come across from Europe every once in a while. It's just really, really, really hard to do. It's a long process. It's an expensive process, and not many people really want to wait and go through that whole process when there's plenty of people who will buy them wherever you are. Uromastics have been, there are so few people that work with them, and the demand has started to go through the roof because, you mentioned in Canada, you saw I'm sure it was either an orange Flavifasciata, so an orange banded, or it was a Moroccan, a nigroventris, because of the ones that have
Moroccan. Yeah.
Okay, so Moroccans are absolute stunners, right? They used to be bred in some regularity. Moroccans have probably been in captivity longer than any other Uromastyx. That's what Bert Langerwerf used to work with, was Moroccan Uromastyx. For a while, there were a handful of breeders, such as the folks I mentioned before, Doug Dix, Lindsey Pike, Audrey Vanderlinden, Tom Greb, Noel Alt. There were a handful of guys doing it for years, but I would say somewhere around 10 years ago, maybe, give or take 10, 12 years ago, something like that. A lot of them fell off for one reason or another, right? Like people's lives change. People decide to move on to different projects. People get different careers. I mean, who knows all the reasons why. And when that happened, there weren't a lot of other people who took it up. There are quite a few people now who are working towards it, myself and a handful of others, especially if we're referring to just here in the United States. But I know the other friends that I have that work with them too, we can't keep up with the demand. As far as prices, you asked about the price range. They vary based on species. So, you can get ones sort of on, I don't want to call them lower end because I don't really buy that, but yeah, but like price points different. So, certain like Saharans and Ocelata, I'll sell for $250 to $275, and then it goes up from there. So ornates, depending on the size and the sex of the individual, it'll vary from anywhere from $350 up to like $800 or $900, just depending on the, if it's like a big adult male who looks badass and he's young and he's killer looking, yeah, he's going to be really expensive. And then you can go up higher. So Thomasii and Princeps tend to be on the upper end of that price point. They'll hover anywhere from $700 to $900 just for babies, just depending on who's selling them or what. I'm glad you brought that up though, because something I want to mention, which is because of Dave, what you mentioned before, which is the sporadic importation and sporadic availability, coupled with the price point, we've seen a huge dramatic shift up and down in their prices. I remember a time when baby Egyptian Uromastics were $75, right? Then they were $125. And then, now the last few times they've been imported, people have sold the babies as fresh imports for like $300 to $400, and then they resell for more. People will get them, raise them, hold on to them for a little bit, and then they'll sell for more later on down the line because they are in very, very high demand. With that said, I also worry about that practice because I worry about people pricing themselves out of a market. I mean, Uromastics are so awesome and they're so badass, and they are nowhere near established in herpetoculture by any stretch of the imagination. Now, I'm working on that one. I definitely want, that's my goal. I've been breeding these for a long time now. This year was my first year of getting really strong F2s of a couple of species. And I want to get to the point where there's no concern about availability of Uromastics in the United States. And we're nowhere near it. We're nowhere near it. There are so many species that are just in tiny numbers here in the country. So Uromastyx yemenensis, right? They come from Yemen, which is a fail state. So they're not coming out of there safely, right? People are not incentivized to go there to collect lizards for the pet trade, right?
No.
So we're talking animals that are essentially reptilian refugees. There's so few of them here. There's, I think, 3 people have bred them in the United States in the last 5 years. It's myself, my friend Matt, my friend Scott. That's it. I mean, sure. Surely there are people who aren't on Facebook who are working with Euros and breeding them, but I don't know where they're at, and I don't know where their animals are because they're nowhere to be found. So even though I do understand that rarity does denote a higher price tag, I've seen people putting up Egyptian Uromastics on fauna classifieds for like $1,000, and that's just nonsense to me. Look, okay, we can have debates, economic debates about supply and demand. We can have economic debates about whether you should pay that kind of money for a lizard. And to be clear, there are some lizards that are damn well worth it, right? Like shingleback skinks, lace monitors, right? Or Bell's phase laces, right? You should pay. I mean, some of them are going to be worth a lot of money, and that makes a ton of sense. And so I'm not trying to say you shouldn't pay for what you're getting, but I do think that there is something absurd. If we can, $1,000, man, come on. It's just, sometimes it just doesn't make much sense to me. And so I'm just going to put out there right now, I have no plan. I'm keeping my prices right where they're at. I'm not going to change them for a long time. I'm not going to try to gouge anybody for their money. Like, I want more people to work with Uromastics, because the more people that do, the more we'll have, and the more they'll be available. We won't have to scrounge at we have to find. It's taken me years to find certain animals, because they're just nowhere to be found. And they're gorgeous, man. They're some of the most brightly cut. Like, the only lizards that I can think of that rival them in terms of color are like panther chameleons and I don't know, like some of those anoles, the blue beauty anoles that Ron St. Pierre has. Those things are like neon colored, but we're talking a short list of lizards that look like that you can keep in a hot, just cooking hot terrarium. You know what I mean? I mean, they're badass, and they live forever, man. You want a 50-year-old Uromastyx? That'd be cool as hell. I think that's great. Yeah.
So
I have a couple.
Yeah.
Can I jump in really quick, Ryan? I've been very quiet tonight. I just want 2 seconds, and then I'll shut the fuck up again. I promise.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I love it when you
I kind of wanted to dabble on your comment about pricing.
Yeah.
And this goes across the board with every species. I pay attention to a lot of markets, just out of boredom usually, but Mexican black milk snakes, $60, $70 animals. Now they're $200, $250, and people sell it immediately. We bring this up a lot, like what skinks did. And, I do side with you a lot on price gouging, but, one thing that's really out of our control, and, this goes for every species, even in ball pythons, you look at some combinations, you're like, how can you charge that much? But the reality is,
right,
if somebody pays that price, it was clearly worth that price.
Totally.
And again, like I said, I did the same thing with skinks. I was butthurt when the price went up to $450. I thought it was stupid. I thought it was price gouging. I just was really bitter about it, only because it limited my market. Some people had the argument it limited bad people coming in that maybe weren't experienced enough to have it by having the high price points. But, I think it went both ways. And, even at the same time, like you discussed the import pricing, when putting skink on something literally double, tripled the price, your Halamaharas, your Marukis, your Iranjaya imports went from $125 on the table up to $300 also.
Totally.
And eventually, when the popularity of the species kind of came down a little bit, those animals are now back on the table for $125 because the import costs went way down.
Sure.
A lot of it, the pricing thing is just such a difficult topic in this hobby because we're never all going to be on the same side with it.
You're absolutely right, and I don't disagree with you at all. Maybe I should add a little bit of clarification. So
you do not need a disclaimer on this, honestly, man. Everybody, we're not fucking Walmart.
No,
we're not Sam's Club. We don't
No.
have a ticket price. We can do whatever the fuck we want. If you're happy with your business, that's
Word.
all that matters, man.
No, totally. No. But I actually, you bring up really, really good points, right? So I totally agree with you. Supply and demand is real. And, you mentioned like a combination ball python gene. Any of those genes that take a combination, that's representative of years of work, right? So yeah, you should definitely fetch a higher price for that. My F2 ornates that I hatched this year, I charged more for because that's second generation captive bred. Those aren't anywhere. Like I mean, maybe 10 years ago there were a couple floating around, but they're not. There's just they're very few in the United States that are second generation captive bred. So I feel like they're worth more. I'm definitely not saying that people shouldn't charge something for their animals. I mean, I got bills to pay, right? I have a shop. I gotta keep those lights on for the lizards, right? So I get it. And I'm not interested in haggling with someone with their asking price per se. My issue comes in, it is absurd that I can go to a reptile store anywhere in the country and buy a patternless leopard gecko for $50. And when those things first came to the market, they were like 10 grand, right? That's the part where I get a little grossed out because I don't want to build a business or a population of animals on the assumption that I'm going to fetch the highest price eternally for this animal. I don't want to do that. To me, it's sort of unconscionable to sell, again, we'll take an Egyptian for an example. If I have a baby Egyptian, if that thing is even in the most top condition, it's absolutely stunning, it's perfect, it's growing, it's just the best, it is the best representative of an Egyptian Uromastyx, man, $1,000, like I actually feel like I'm making kind of a bad case for myself right now, but
No, you're okay.
I guess what I'm trying to say is it makes me uncomfortable to see the prices fluctuate to that degree. Now, if if next year, if the prices for Egyptians are still $1,000, like, all right, like let's keep up. If people are going to pay $1,000 for an Egyptian, then charge $1,000 for an Egyptian. Okay. Like I'm not going to tell anybody what to price it at, but it just feels awkward. I feel like we're going to initiate or at least instill the habit of chasing after the next price tag, like we don't go to expensive restaurants because they have a high price tag, right? We go to expensive restaurants because the food presumably is going to be delicious and better than McDonald's. So if I charge, $1,000 for a baby Egyptian, that better be the best damn Uromastyx that you've ever had. Like it should be everything you wanted and more and should make your coffee in the morning. But the reality is that I don't want anyone chasing the price tag. You should be chasing the beauty of the animal, the thrill of keeping it and breeding it if that's what you're into. It shouldn't be a monetary motivation. I mean, we've all met people who get into ball pythons, bearded dragons, crested geckos, and leopard geckos because they're going to be the next big thing. They're going to be the next big breeder. I'm going to have a business and I'm going to have morphs. And it's like, we've all met those guys. And I respect that that's a vital part of our industry because it's part of it. But come on. I mean, like yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No. I'm pointing at Benjamin. That's why he's in the hobby. He's money motivated. It's the Jew in him, buddy. You can't take the Jew out of Ben.
Hey, there it is, man. I got look. And again, I'm not trying to beat anybody over the head with my opinion. I'm trying to look at longevity. I want someone, if they're going to get into Uromastics, if it's a 50-year pet, you should know what you're doing and be into it for 50 years. Don't just buy it because you can produce, don't buy 2 of this thing because you can produce, neon pink, spinning moronic mealworm guzzlers just to get and charge $700 for them. Like, come on, that's a living creature. Give it the regard and the respect, and that alone should fetch an adequate price. You know what I'm saying? Like, I also think it's kind of unconscionable in the reverse, right? I think it's gross that you can buy certain lizards for like $20. That's disgusting. It's a living creature that probably has a lifespan that's at least comparable to any other lizard out there, somewhere 10 to 20 years. And it has really interesting, complex needs. We mislead people by saying, it was just $20. I'll throw it in a shoebox and it'll live for 6 months and die of MBD. Like, come on, man. No one's gonna ass out on a lizard they had to spend $200 on because it was $200. I'm gonna do it right. I'm gonna take care of it. I'm gonna give it the time it deserves. It's a great living creature, And again, so I guess I'm just saying it kind of goes both ways,
I mean, I agree, and I'm sure we all do agree with that. And too, when it comes to mutations in this hobby, we all know that numbers can be driven down. And it almost has just become the norm at this point that people don't question it when it happens. But, when you talk about people who work with species, non-mutations, just the best example of that species, that's a completely different market with a completely different buying pool.
True.
And that's really the truth. So, the patternless gecko deal, like with leopard geckos, holy fuck, man, those things produce like crazy.
Yeah, they sure do, don't they?
And they're very hardy, and anyone can do them. They're a great starting for any breeder out there. Just do the research on Cryptosporidium before you go out and buy a leopard gecko. Don't be surprised later on.
Real talk.
But no, and the same thing goes for like skink stuff. Like, our westerns and easterns are a premium. Our blotchies and centurions and shinglebacks are a premium.
Yeah, they're badass, man.
If there were 100 westerns for sale every year, I'm not convinced the price would drop down under $2,000.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. Yeah,
collectors out there that want to still get those animals.
Yeah, I agree.
So, like I said, talking money is in anything is a cliche. I mean, everyone, again, we throw disclaimers on that. Yeah. You know what it costs to keep your lights on. You know what dietary regimens you got to do, what that's going to cost you.
True.
And I'd like to think you've done the math where you're not just breaking even every year and have imaginary money over there.
No, of course not.
What you charge is what you charge. But, it really is funny sometimes with people in this hobby is, we see that money coming in and we get $300 in and we spend $300 and we don't even think about what it costs to make that $300.
Yeah. Totally.
So, this is a very difficult business.
It is, yeah. That's all true.
I don't know how many people are out there doing it, but I can almost guarantee if you count up how many people are doing it full time, it's a very minuscule number.
It's a tiny number of people.
It's worth chasing, but the ups and downs to get there are fucking taxing. And the people who come in with money typically don't survive. Unrealistic expectations. No offense to Ben and Ryan, but partnerships, real motherfucker.
You
guys have a deep connection. You guys are in for the long haul. But we all go into it, and we see the price points. We take our buddy to a show. He sees what everyone's doing, and he wants in. And let's do it together because we get there faster. But somewhere along the line, we don't produce as many as we wanted to that year. Somewhere along the line, that mutation we paid $15,000 for is $2,000 within 8 months. Like, there's so many fucking variables in this. It's not even funny. And again, this hobby right now is not the same hobby it was 5 years ago. The Uromastic, Uromastics. I don't know, what were Uromastics 5 years ago?
Depends on the species, but nowhere near. Like ornates were 200, maybe 250, sometimes 300. Egyptians, I saw them maybe 125 before their price shot up. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, last thing, and then we're gonna get to Ryan because I don't try not to be the bad guy. So the growth of the hobby, man. This hobby is getting bigger every year. I think when it comes to the pet trade in the world, the reptile hobby has grown more than anything else in the last 10 years for good reason.
Yeah, right.
So, there's a guilt factor, like you said, where it's like, holy fuck, am I price gouging? But at the same time, I mean, lights aren't cheap, buddy. You know what your fucking electrical bill is. It is through the roof, guarantee.
Yeah, true that. So really quick, and then we'll go. I'm sorry, man. I'm not trying to keep your questions on the back burner or anything. I guess you mentioned another thing that I think is really important, which is that this hobby's growing every year, right? Like it's just exploding. So many people are getting into reptiles. It's awesome. And I think that is more of a call to work as ethically as you can to set the best example possible, because we all know shitty people in the reptile trade, right? We've all been screwed by some asshole. Yeah, this guy. No, I'm just kidding. We've all been screwed by some asshole. We've all seen people abuse their animals. We've all seen animals go underserved and mistreated, right? So my thing about price was not necessarily to suggest that it's bad. It's just that I just want to set the best example, because I know I'm 34, or I mean, I'm going to be 34 in January, man. Like when I'm 55 or 60, I want a thriving, well-developed, more mature reptile hobby. I want more people to be doing it at a higher level with better ethics. I want to give as few bits of rationale to PETA to shut us down as possible, right? Like, and so I think in some ways, I just feel like there's arguments to be, and again, none of this is to refute what you said about price. You're totally right, man. You're 100% right. Maybe there's there's other stuff on there. Ryan,
You got the direction right.
Yeah, well, it's you're right above me, so it's like, oh, I got that. But if I, like this is for me, this is pointing at these two
just
over
think
here.
backwards. If you want to point at Ryan, you point away from Ryan.
That is, that's actually, there you go. That's clever. Yeah, you got it.
Way to go.
My mom.
Yeah.
I just have a couple fill-in questions that are a little important, I think. You said you got to get them hot. What does that mean?
Yeah. Okay, so excellent question. So Uromastics need a temperature, like a basking zone temperature of about 125 degrees, roughly. Now, people who have kept them outdoors, or people who have been to where they're at in the wild, say that they'll see them basking out on rocks when they, standing up on all fours, and when they temp gun the rocks, it's like 150 degrees, right? So those, I mean, I'm sure that's, I get it. That's great. But when it comes to heating your Uromastics, one of the things I see all the time is people put this is for tons of reptiles, right? You get a 18-inch bearded dragon, and they put one spotlight right up here, and it hits the back of the lizard, and it's about that much heat on the lizard, right? We've all seen this. I've got an Egyptian Uromastyx that's 25 inches. That animal has a 25-inch space where he can reach the entire length of his body, from the tip of his nose to the end of his tail to the ends of his claws. Every part of his body can hit 125 degrees whenever he wants. So he's got 6 basking lights all in one big spot. He's a spoiled bastard. But so they need it cooking, man. And that's just the basking zone. That's for them to heat up and get to their peak temperature. The ambient hot side temperature should be 105, roughly, give or take 5 degrees. And as you cruise down towards the cooler end of the cage, I would suggest going no lower than 81. Depending on the season, right? Midsummer, man, it gets hot as hell in my shop, and it probably sits 85, 88 degrees on the coolest end of the cage most of the year, or at least most of the summer, rather. During the winter, that changes. So my animals in the dead of winter, they still get access to 125 degree basking zones, but it's for a shorter period of time, and the nighttime lows and the ambient lows are much lower. So the ambient temperature at the cool end of the cage is like 72 to 80, and then at night it drops into the low 60s. Sometimes even in, like, I've had it go as cold as like 58 degrees, sometimes lower in the shop. The Euros, they just sleep the whole thing off, right? But it's really important. You see a lot of times where people give them just a little bit too cold, where the maximum temperature they can get is like 110, 112. Now, I got a lot of Euros that spend a lot of time basking at about 115 degrees. That's where they spend most of their time. But that doesn't mean they don't utilize hotter basking temperatures. And again, it depends a little bit on season. And it also doesn't mean that they don't utilize areas where it's a little cooler. They, sometimes, especially in the winter, I see them just bail to one cool side of the cage and they'll just stay there for, like, I've got a Moroccan that I haven't seen it since September, and I probably won't see it again until February. And it's gone. It's in its hide, it's in its burrow, it's doing its thing. And it'll pop out in February. It'll sit under the basking light for 3 hours and take one massive dump, and then it'll get back on a normal track. It's pretty crazy. So yeah, they need it really, really hot. And unfortunately, that does mean that you usually need a couple of powerful basking lights on there, because it's very rare that one heat lamp and a single UV light get to an adequate temperature. Now, you might look at the picture that you pulled up earlier of my shop with all the pools, and you might say, hey man, some of those pools only have one basking light on them. Fair criticism. But that's because it's a smaller animal, and the basking light's higher up, so the beam is spread out. So if it's a Princeps or Thomasi, they only need about like an 8 or 9 inch space of basking zone. Mm-hmm. And then the fact that I have a whole warehouse full of lights keeps that ambient temperature very, very high, which means that I have it's basically many hands make light work. I don't need to put multiple basking lights on a single cage to achieve the same thermal gradients. I get it through sheer force of numbers.
So along those lines, you're talking about it disappears into its hide or its burrow.
Yeah.
Are you putting a deep substrate so they can go down into?
No. People do. I know guys that do that, and it's really cool if you can. I've seen guys make a sort of like an under tank compartment where they can go down and stay at a more consistent temperature. But basically, the way I have each pen set up for at least adult animals anyway is they have somewhere between 6 and 12 different hide spots. At any given point in time. And each of those hide spots are at different temperatures, different humidities, and different height levels inside the cage. So most of the time in the winter, the Euros will find the deepest hide, and they'll just set up camp, and they will just stick themselves in there, and they won't come out for a very long time. Some of them will do a little bit differently, where they'll find a hide, and they'll stay in it, and they never come out, but it just so happens that hide is underneath the basking light. So, but it's rare that they choose an in-between. It's either one under, like an around the heat source, or one very far from the heat source. This is all different species, but we're talking no deeper than, 8 inches or so. I think if I was outdoors, I would probably add something more substantial for them. I know that people will go through the trouble of putting in a humid hide inside the enclosure, which I think is a great thing to do. I just don't do it myself. And, in that case, we're talking like a box, basically, what you'd see with like a nest box, basically, with a corrugated tube leading into some big Rubbermaid container filled with wet substrate of some kind. And I think that's great too, but I just don't really think they need it, at least not indoors. And especially, none of the temperatures in my space are getting life-threateningly cold, so they don't really necessarily have a lot of pressure to go deeper to try to find somewhere a little warmer. I think if you were allowing much greater temperature extremes, you probably require a deeper burrow or deeper access to some subterranean hide that's maybe artificially heated or something like that to try to keep things rolling. But I don't give them that much space to burrow, unless it's a gravid female. Of course. Yeah.
So I guess that's where my next question leads to, because I want to know about humidity that you give them, and you just said you don't give them a lot, but I saw some of the pictures of where you're getting eggs from, and it looks like it's sort of damp sand. So are you just putting a specific sort of deep damp sand hide for them to go in and bury eggs, or? Yeah.
Okay. So really cool. So two points there. So the first would be, even in the cages where it's a young animal or not a breeding animal, I have gotten in the habit of spraying the having a select set of hides in the cage that I spray regularly. So, you know, whether that's like I turn it up, spray underneath it, and then close it, or whether it's in a lot of the cages, I'll take you know, some kind of absorbent material like some kind of peat moss or a topsoil or something like that, and I'll cram the hides with that stuff, and then I wet that substrate down about 3 times a week or so, and that's for all of them. That's, you know, male, female, young, old, all of them get that, and that's what I do for a humid hide for the Uromastyx, because I want them to be able to go wherever they want. Now, some of that is because here in Colorado, it's exceptionally dry. You know, if I lived in Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, I would never need to do that, right? Because there's just so much ambient humidity. They're probably getting a lot out of that, right? But here in Colorado, it is just bone dry all year round, even in the spring. So I do that, and I add it to the cages. And I should note that I have top opening cages. So any humidity that ends up in the cage escapes quickly and easily when and if needed. I did not do this when I used fully enclosed, you know, like sliding glass front cages. I also didn't feel the need. As far as nesting, yeah, I use these 20-gallon Rubbermaid totes that are about, I don't know, 12 to 15 inches tall, and I think they're 18 inches, maybe 20 inches or so long. I haven't measured them, I'm not sure, but depending on the species, I'll cut a hole in the top or in the side, and I'll put a corrugated tube in that hole in the side, like the one you'd use for a gutter. And the ones I cut a hole in the top are for species that seem to require a little more of like a down digging burrow. So Thomasi, Princeps, Ocellata, but that's also because they tend to, it's easier to set up a larger enclosure with, you know, in their individual pens. I can set up a bunch of stones that lead up to the top of this nest box, and they can just go down into the nesting space. It also helps because if it's a top opening nest box, they don't kick as much dirt out. Mm-hmm. Whereas with the tube that enters on the side, a lot of females will kick excess dirt out of the nest box, and I use a mix of sand and topsoil or sand and coconut fiber, and I wet it down inside the nesting box. So what I do for the ones where it's a side entrance tube is I turn the tube so that the tube comes out of the container and then cuts at like a 90 or more degree angle. And then at the entrance of the tube, I make it small. So I put a brick in front of it, or I cram it between some features in the enclosure. So that way it's a small entryway that they can make their way in, and they're less likely to kick out as much sand out of the nest box. And the reason I use a side entrance tube for some instead of a top entering entrance to the burrow is because for some species, like the bigger ones, like Egyptians, Nigroventris, Ornata, Flavofasciata, Maliensis, Dispartispar, they, I don't know, it's just a feeling. They seem to get a little more skeptical of the top entrance burrow. They just don't buy it. They don't believe that it's going deep, so they kind of ignore it. So when I give them that side entrance corrugated tube, I think it gives them the illusion of going deeper into a tunnel or a burrow before they hit the chamber where they're going to lay their eggs. Again, that's just a hypothesis. I don't necessarily have any data to back that one up. That's just what I feel is going on with these guys. And then I strategically place the nest box so it's I'll actually watch the females. I usually try to put it somewhere pretty close to the basking zone, because the Euros tend to want to lay their eggs in an area that's about 90 to 95 degrees. That's where they tend to seek it out. So I'll put the nest box near the basking zone, and then I'll check it after they start digging in there. If they're digging on the side of the nesting box that's furthest away from the basking light, I pull it away by a few inches from the basking light. And usually then that stops them from digging on the far end. I'm looking to give them a spot that is the ideal temperature and is the ideal distance down into the substrate for their eggs. So if I get them laying all their eggs, you know, if I see them digging in a corner for hours and hours and hours, it's not an adequate nest box. They need deeper substrate, a longer tube, or it needs to be further away from the basking site because they're trying to get to a cooler site to deposit those eggs, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I guess the last thing that I have in my chain of questions here is,
Yeah.
what does incubation look like for these guys?
Oh, yeah, another killer question, man. I love talking about this shit. So the Euros are totally kooky, man. They will hatch at a wide range of temperatures, much like most things, right? But the temperature that seems to correspond with the most, call it reasonable hatch time frame is like 92 degrees, roughly.
Okay.
So you cook them pretty hot, but when you cook them that hot, they hatch fat and grumpy. If you cook them a little cooler, their hatching process is a little more protracted, so you'll get a longer time frame of them where the eggs are deflating before they get slit, and you'll get a longer time frame of the animal slitting the egg and spending time before fully emerging. When I cook them at about 91 to 92, or 90 to 92 rather, they almost all hatch around 65 days. There are a few exceptions. Princeps and Thomasi will hatch at 50 to 55 days sometimes, which is pretty fast. And then Egyptians and Flav fasciata and Yemenensis, they'll hatch closer to 75 to 80 days. Now, I have had some variety in that. I had one Princeps egg that incubated for like 100-something days before it hatched. But it was a kind of a dud. The baby was fine, but the egg was a single fertile egg laid in a clutch of 10 that was all duds. And that one egg was the only one that survived, and it just incubated forever. I don't know what, I have no idea why that was, but it just took forever to hatch. But it hatched a healthy baby, so no biggie. That would bring me to another topic that I've been trying to explore, which is the whole temperature sex determination thing, right? So people ask all the time, is the sex of baby Uromastyx dependent on temperature, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And of course, I think the correct answer would be that most reptiles, there is some influence from temperature on gender, right? I mean, that's just seems to be the way it goes. I don't think it's cut and dry with Euros. I've incubated multiple species at 2 or 3 or 4 different temperature points, and I've gotten totally wildly varied differences in the gender of each of those babies. So I've incubated cooler clutches where I got mostly female, and cooler clutches where I got mostly male, and the whole gamut. I will say that when I incubate closer to 92, the trend has been towards more males.
Okay.
And that varies a little bit. Thomasi in particular seem to hatch male heavy. The clutches, no matter what the temperature is, every Thomasi clutch I've ever hatched has yielded, probably a 70-30 split of males to females. That's probably a relatively inaccurate number because baby Uromastics are exceedingly difficult to sex, and I haven't been able to track every single one I've ever hatched. But based on the animals that I've kept as holdbacks, and the number of animals where people have stayed in touch with me and told me what they, if I was right or wrong about sexing the Uromastics they got, leads me to say that they lean heavily towards the male end. For some reason, it's I'm not exactly sure what that is. I don't think it's temperature, so I don't think it has at least a dramatic effect on it. But I need a few more years of notes before I can speak more definitively on that particular topic.
And what kind of humidity are you keeping them at while you're incubating them?
Yeah, so pretty dry, man. I mix, I use perlite as the bedding, and I mix the substrate where it's about, it's by weight, and I kind of do it by feel now, but when I was still trying to be really meticulous about it, I did about little less than 1-to-1 water to medium by weight. Just a little bit less. I found that if I put a little too much water in there, I'd get a higher mortality rate from the eggs. I'd see more eggs croak. I started keeping it a little drier, and even though sometimes the eggs after they're laid, maybe 4 or 5 of them in the clutch might dimple initially when you pull them out of the nest box and you put them in the bedding, depending on how soon after she laid you collect them. But I don't add any water, and after about a week they puff back up. So I don't think they need it terribly. I think it's too much water is bad news. You're probably going to get a lot more mortality than anything. But I use perlite now because I prefer it. I've used vermiculite, hatcherite, cocoa fiber, sim containers. I mean, you can hatch Euros in all of those ways, but personally, I think perlite's the best probably, because it's antifungal and really cheap and nice and clean and easy to monitor. Vermiculite, I don't like it that much, because with vermiculite, sometimes people will miss mold starting because it's, the mold is like that white fuzzy mold, and the vermiculite maybe masks it because it's so multicolor and it's shiny with all the mica and stuff in there. So I don't really like vermiculite too much. I don't like the sim stuff. I think sim incubation is cool, and I get why people do it. It's really dope, but man, it's just too medical for my taste. I like the dirt. I loved incubating. I tried incubating them on cocoa fiber a few times, and that worked pretty well, but I don't know. It just made me feel kind of weird. I didn't feel like I had as good a control over the moisture content. So I just stick with perlite. I think it's my preferred incubation medium.
So if somebody chose to use the sim boxes,
yeah,
and had them suspended above water, do you think they would do okay?
Oh yeah. Plenty of people have done it. Yeah. I've seen lots of guys in Europe hatch Euros with the sim. And I'm pretty sure at least a couple of people here in the States, I'm sure, have done it. Maybe there are a few guys who, a buddy of mine, John Trupiano, I'm pretty sure I've seen him hatch Euros on a sim container. So it's not bad or anything. It's just not my taste. It's like to me, I feel like I'm looking at Alien or just like some weird scene in a medical horror film if I'm incubating them in a sim. I love the sim. I love when I open up a container of baby Euros and they've all like busted out of their eggs and they're just like, oh, they freak out and they kick perlite on each other, and there's some that are just buried, holding still, giving you the stink eye. It's just awesome. I love it. So
backtracking a step.
Let's do it.
How many times you introduce the male for a lock during the breeding season?
Nice. Okay. Yeah. So nowadays I max it out at about 3, because in the past I kind of had the mindset like the more the better, right? You're increasing the odds of fertility, and you're making it more likely you're going to get a fertile clutch and all these things, which okay, I can vibe with that. But I tried for a couple of years where I let certain animals only mate once, and off a single mating you get 100%. All the eggs are fertile except for one maybe, and all the babies hatch. Like, okay, that's it. I don't need it. That's all you need, So I do 3 now, but that's what I've noticed is that Euros will, as soon as they start mating, so whenever the female allows the male to mate, there's about a 7 to 14 day window where they will continue to allow mating from almost any male. They usually don't discriminate too much once they start ovulating. But I just don't think that. I just think it's like a lot of extra stress, because even when females are receptive, you put them in with a male, and sometimes you can tell it's like a slightly stressful affair. Maybe the female's like a little bit scared at first and runs from the male, and the male chases after her and pins her down. Sometimes certain males will bite on the nape and then drag the female around the cage for minutes before they actually mate. I had this year, one of my male Yemenensis did this totally weird thing that I've never seen the other Euros do it like this, where he bit the female's nape, mated with her, withdrew, held on, and mated again and again, switching sides, switching hemipenes. He did it like 7 times. I was like, good Christ, man, that guy's an admirable level of virility, like that's miraculous. I don't know how he pulled it off, but that was the only time I let him mate. And I mean, she laid.
And how many times did that guy fight other males in his development?
I don't know. He was a wild caught animal. He came in as an adult, so I have no idea.
100 million times. I'm in. I think I'm right about this.
Yeah.
Fight.
That's a good. Yeah, good. But
little triggers makes them develop more virility.
That makes a lot of sense. But I will say too that he's never done that before, and he hasn't done well. He did it this year, so we'll see if he does it again next year. He made it 3 or 4 years before too, and he never did that. He made it once. Yeah. I've had a couple where they hold on and then switch sides and mate once, but not 7 damn times in a row. That dude's a beast. Like I don't know how he pulls that off. It was pretty incredible.
Anything Yemen fights like that.
Oh my god, dude! These Yemenensis are they're stunning. If you haven't seen a Uromastyx Yemenensis, for my money, that's the coolest looking Euro in terms of color and pattern. Yeah, bring one up. They're beautiful, man. They basically are Denver Bronco blue and orange, and then they have these bright white oscillations, and then they at the edges where the white and the orange meet, it turns like a pastel pink, and they have these really high contrast black outlines to all the white oscillations on the back, and then this kind of spidery black patterning on the back of their heads. They're beautiful, dude. And then as babies, they're like little gems. I don't even know how to describe them. They are just utter stunners, man. And kind of unique. You don't really see that kind of orange and that kind of blue that often, at least not in Uromastyx anyway. Everyone's so familiar with ornates because they're so beautiful and I've never seen an ugly ornate Uromastyx. They're always gorgeous, right? Mm-hmm. But they're kind of gaudy, like, they're just like, oh, look at me. Like, they're kind of attention grabby. And I kind of like the ones that are a little more on the fringes that are like, I don't have as much I'm not going to yell at you. Cause like, I'm a painter, and there's this real famous painter named Andrew Wyeth. And he used to say, why yell when a whisper will do? And he was talking about color. Like why why scream with a color when a whisper will do just fine. I like that. So I'm kind of into that. And then the other reason I like Yemenensis is because so far it appears that their offspring are basically just the same color, right? So if you have a nice blue and orange male with bright white patterning, most of his sons pretty much look that way. Whereas with ornates, they're all over the board. You can have a blue pair of ornata or a green pair of ornata, and they'll throw babies of every color. So you'll get blue and green or blue and green mixtures. There are different color combos where you have a blue and a green with salmon. That's a young Yemenensis, so that's maybe not a great example, but he's a cool picture. He's a nice looking dude. He's a killer actually. He's full grown now, that guy, but you get ones where there's a mixture of salmon pink and blue. You'll get green and blue with yellow, green and blue with like a teal and reds. I mean, they're so variable. And I had a clutch this year. It was a blue female and a green male, and it was a male heavy clutch. And I've got 7 brothers from that clutch they're same age, same parents. Each one of them is a totally different color, and they don't look anything like their dad. Like it's like, what the hell, man? How did this even happen? It's really cool. I'm really excited to learn more in the next couple of years about exactly how those colors. Yeah, that's a Yemenensis. I love that guy. That's the one who made it like 7 times. He's the one. I love those dudes. So yeah, that's another great one. If I'm not mistaken, that animal is my friend Camille's Yemenensis. He's my buddy in the Netherlands. He's been breeding Euros longer than me, and he's one of the guys who helped me early on he helps me still, but he's a wonderful dude. I'm pretty sure that's his animal. But I'm really excited for the next couple of years because I'm really eager to see what kind of color combinations yield what with ornates in particular, because we really don't know. And it's kind of convoluted in some ways because the females, they are so drab for so long that by the time they start showing color, you don't know if she's representative of a predominantly blue animal or a predominantly green animal. And so there's going to be all kinds of weird combos, right? So you green to blue and blue to blue and green to green and bicolor to bicolor, and ones that are blue with salmon and blue with yellow, and like what are the what the hell comes out of that? This is the other selling point with Uromastics. The other reason people should get into them, because there is so much that we don't know. We really, I'd be willing to bet you $1,000 that Josh Dovenbarger and Tracy over at Phantom Dragon, they probably don't. There's probably nothing that they're going to learn dramatically about bearded dragons. Like they know just about everything you're going to know about a bearded dragon, about what they're going to do in what circumstances, right? Because they've been doing it forever and they kick ass at it, right?
Right.
Uromastics, we don't have that yet. We don't have 20 years of breeding the same species over and over and over again. We don't have any clarity about it, how they inherit color, like how long is their breeding lifespan, right? We don't know that yet. What happens when you start making selective choices for color if somebody ever decides to try to morph out a Uromastyx, which I don't really want them to do, but let's just, oh, sorry, my bad. But I'm just saying, like, if they did it.
End the interview right now.
News
coming in from Levinson, Pennsylvania. What happened?
Nice. I was wondering if that was going to come up, but for real, they're just I guess the point I'm trying to make is there's so much that we really don't know about these guys. And as much as I love doing it, I can't do it by myself. I need other people who are going to breed these things, and I got to learn more from other people. I need more people breeding Euros and more people who are doing it on a big scale. So that way, not only it's going to keep me on my toes, but we're going to learn more about them. We're going to learn more about what they need, what they don't need. Cause I want to see 20 year, I want to see a 30-year-old ornate Uromastyx that's like in the prime of his life. He's still breeding. He's still kicking ass. He's a good pet. Like, that's going to be awesome, man. I can't wait for that to be the reality. But until then, everybody should get more Euros because we just don't know. And there's a somewhere between like 18 and 22 species, and little over a dozen of which we can get here in the United States. There's no way they're all the same. There's no way, right? I can note differences already between certain species, and that's just with 10 or 12 years of breeding that particular species. But we need, my computer's going to die, so I'm going to move it really quick. But we need more people who are breeding these Euros, so that way, we got to learn more about them. It's just confusing, terrestrial species and slightly more arboreal species, ones that have longer seasons, ones that have shorter seasons, ones that are montane, and ones that just live out on sandy plains. Like, damn, dude, it's just like it's a damn treasure trove of cool shit to learn about cool lizards, man. Like, got to get those Euros, right?
I'm in. You sold me, brother.
Yeah, we're good. Good. This is a better argument than my price argument. That was probably ill-advised.
No, it was a great conversation. It was worth having.
Yeah.
I enjoy that aspect of this business, tell you the truth.
Yeah, me too.
Benjamin, do you have any questions at the moment? You have been quiet for a while. If Ryan does, well, Ryan, are you pointing? You got a question, Ryan?
I can go in. I don't care.
Well,
look, you said you keep more than Euros. What else you got going on, man?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So
hold on. Dave may have something on Euros.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to get off of Euros yet. I have one last Euro question. Then we can go on our everything.
Okay, sure.
So the melanistic is new to me. I was unaware of the melanistic. I think that's really awesome.
Okay.
You guys have the albino now, and it is breeding, and I believe that may be over in Europe. And a lot of species that people work with are usually not very more motivated when, like you said, you have 18 to 20 different color variations that are natural.
Yeah, sure.
My question is, being one of the 3 Uromastic breeders in the world, would you take a chance or go after an albino project, or do you really see no reason to go that venture?
Oh man, I'm so psyched that you brought this up. Okay, so let me start.
Ask too, actually.
Okay, cool. So let me start with let me just start really quick on the melanistic thing, because it's like just like a slight misnomer. So the animals that are melanistic usually are a Uromastyx flavofasciata, which is a banded Uromastyx, and they are typically banded with white, yellow, or orange, or you get certain Molly Uromastyx or Uromastyx Alfred Schmidti, which is just a naturally all black Uromastyx. And the thing is, because their color is ontogenic, the older the animal is, and the more of a member of that dispar complex that it is, Flavofasciata, nigroventris, Alfred Schmidti, molliensis, those all, as they get older, the black will take over the color. So to say that they're, I mean, I guess, yes, you're right. Technically they are melanistic because that's an all black Euro, but it's not exactly like, it's not the same kind of like recessive heritable melanism that we would typically think of, like with like a jeweled Lacerta, right? You can get those melanistic jeweled Lacertas that are just jet black from the get-go. These ones aren't quite like that. So I just wanted to make sure, I just want to point that out. And then to your question, so as I know right now, Joshua Marquis has well, not one, but he's breeding an albino Saharan Uromastyx. He's in the States. He's doing a great job with that. Myself and my friend Scott Wilson are in fact working with a kind of ornate Uromastyx that is I don't know if it's a hypo or a T positive or T negative albino. I just don't know yet. It is definitely a recessive trait. As far as I can tell, these guys have like a golden pinkish eye. But I don't know yet because it may just be a hypo. It is definitely recessive. And I have one that I'm planning on breeding next year. Yes, I do think that, okay, so this is a great controversial topic, right? And especially in Uromastyx, the general trend is for people to be pretty apprehensive and cautious of the morph market. People don't want to see Uromastyx turn into, leopard geckos. And I love leopard geckos, so I'm not talking shit. I'm just saying not everybody wants to see that happen with Uromastyx. I try to keep a really open mind about certain types of color mutations. I certainly will not chase the mutation. If something pops up in my colony or my projects naturally, okay, yeah, like let's talk about it. Let's see if it has any flaws. Let's see if there's any downsides to this trait, and then we'll go from there. That's why I have this hypo or albino ornate, whatever it is. I intend to see if there's any downsides to it, because if it has, if down the line they have eye issues or something like that, I'm not going to bother. I'm not going to do it. I may have one on hand, and that's cool, but it's just the only kind of mutations that I would ever personally entertain and try to actually select and breed for, if it popped up in my colonies, would be something where there's not really like a major adverse effect to it. So like, for example, if you have banded Uromastyx, they have horizontal banding that go across the back. If some random gene popped up where it striped them down the spine and it was harmless, cool, like weird, that's pretty kooky, that's interesting. Let's let that float through the colony, right? But I don't think I will try to have it come up. I don't know if I'll do that unless it's something really special or really like harmless. Like I fantasized before about like if I had an Egyptian Uromastyx that hatched jet black, you're damn right I'd keep that thing. That's cool as hell. A bad to the bone 3 foot, 32-inch jet black Euro would be cool as hell. But no, I probably won't seek it out. But I have to be really open-minded, because as we were talking before, the market is really fickle and the market can change all the time. So it may be that in order to continue breeding Uromastyx at the scale that I'm doing it, if the demand takes it into the realm of having to have a mutation in my collection, then okay, yeah, like I'm open to that, but I just won't do it if it's harmful. I won't do it if it causes them to spin, or I won't do it if it causes them to have bad eyesight. I won't do it if it screws with their ability to sit in the UV or something, under the lights, or get out in the sun or something like that. I just won't do that. I don't want to bastardize. Okay, I gotta be careful, because I'm not trying to again, I'm not trying to talk shit about the morph market. I'm just saying it's not something I want to do with the Euros right now. But obviously I am doing it with the one ornate, and I'll stay open-minded to that, but I don't want to seek it out. I really don't. It's just,
which is fine. Again, it's for each their own. I mean, you run your business however you want to run your business.
sure.
And the day may come, you have it, or maybe you don't. It really doesn't matter.
I might eat these words in 10 years, I might come back on here in 10 years and be like, yeah, you remember that shit I said about never morphing out of Uromastics? Well, here's 10 albinos, like I don't know. I just don't expect, I don't know. Maybe, hopefully
the
I'm
drive
somewhat
isn't there, but
Yeah.
you're not saying no.
Yes, that's a much more concise way of putting it. Yes.
Do you believe, because purity, I'm sure, is a very big driven deal in Uromastics.
Yeah.
Do you think people in the albino project will disregard the species where it comes from and start crossing it through all of them to see if you can change the color palette?
Yeah, probably. I think people will hybridize Uromastics. I mean, I've seen it online. There was a guy in some of the Uromastics groups on Facebook. That's a beautiful Flavifasciata, by the way, orange banded Euro. That thing's a smoker. If I saw a guy who was in Asia somewhere post a picture of like it was like a McFadeni mating with an Ocelota. And it was just like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing that? Like if these things were way more widespread, if they were established for decades and there wasn't any worry that they were going anywhere anytime soon, knock yourself out. Make a separate line that has, it's a hybrid between ornate, Ocelota, Philbii. I don't care, but as it stands now, the availability of every species, even the most common species, is not one that would lend itself to hybridization. It would be, I know that there have been other guys, like, for example, I know Douglas Dix years ago, he crossed, we lost somebody, I guess. He crossed Moroccan Uromastics with banded Uromastics in an effort to create a replica of the orange and yellow banded Uromastics, which occur naturally, because there was a lot of speculation that these were intergrades, natural intergrades between Moroccan Uromastics and banded Uromastics. I think since then there's been some studies on yellow and orange Flavifasciata revealing that they're just Flavifasciata. They're not intergrades, as a matter of fact. I don't think it's necessarily, I kind of fall in the middle. You have people who are just like vehemently against hybridization, and then people who are like, who cares? A Chihuahua and a Saint Bernard are all dogs. Who cares? It's really cool. And, I respect both those points of view. I think there are reasons they're pets. At the end of the day, these are pets. They're not wild animals after a certain point in time. If you're going to hybridize them, knock yourself out. It's just dangerous in terms, the only danger from that comes with conservation. And we're not a zoo. We're not working with a species protection program or anything like that would lead us to need to keep some form of genetic clarity, purity, whatever you want to call it, in with those Uromastics. I do think it's a little irresponsible at the moment. I just don't think it's like the recklessly fraught thing that everyone makes it out to be. I don't know. So I kind of fall in the middle. What do you guys think about that? Actually, I'm really curious. What would you guys say to some kind of weird mutation or hybrid between Uromastics?
Yes.
Yeah, you're in for it.
I don't know. I just came back. I missed a whole bunch of stuff. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We were just talking about the differences. Like, what they asked if I would be cool with seeing the mutation or a hybrid.
Brian caught up. He walked away from us. We didn't walk away from him, buddy. You don't have to hold his hand.
What a jerk. I mean,
I'll hang my head in shame.
How dare you, But yeah.
No, again, Ryan, you missed out. You could ease it back in. No, you got this, buddy. But
I'm good.
I'm still a very for each their own. I do think people can be a little too sensitive, but I do like your angle that you're coming from.
Yeah.
Let's put the time into it before we start fucking up things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. That would be my main request to anyone out there listening, wanting to hybridize their Uromastics. Just like give it 10 or 15 years, then go ahead.
Yeah, and you guys haven't even got into the realm of line breeding yet. You have no idea what you can do on an F3 or F5 generation of any of these. So
that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
That's the time I'd be putting in over mixing colors to see if it does something wacky. I mean,
same here.
And too, with genetics changing every single day, like even talking to Warren Booth about how there's a species of boa that got broken up into 2 species and they're practically neighbors. You would have thought they were maybe a different locality, but a whole different species.
Right.
I was just gonna say, when the time's put into Uromastics, your 22 number could turn into 44.
Totally.
You guys could have been crossing them for years, like the green tree python guys were, and they've been broken up into 3 species.
That's right.
So,
totally.
It's certain things that we just don't know enough about, and I'm sure we're gonna find out later on. We were probably wrong about a lot of this stuff, but this really is a new hobby.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So so I used to breed quite a few species of collared lizard. I love collared lizards. They're epic. I've bred like 5 or 6 different species of those guys. And that's another topic because pretty much all species of collared lizards will interbreed with one another to some degree. Or if given the opportunity, right? Not in the wild per se, but in captivity, they'll do it. Right. And there's this whole trend, in the hobby as a whole, but also primarily in Europe, people talk a lot about locality specific, which is super cool. I think that's really fun. When I was breeding the collared lizards, I would go collect Baja collared lizards or Bicentories or whatever, and I would get them from the same square mile of a hillside, and those would be my breeders. And it was really fun to know that the ones I was hatching were if essentially the equivalent of what would hatch in the wild. That was really fun. We have that luxury because I can go there and see where they're coming from. I don't have that luxury with Uromastics. We ornates, there's no way they're all collected from the same place. They occur across multiple different countries, right? And so even if they all come from the same country, they're probably pulling them from this, a 20-mile stretch of road, which one end of that stretch of road and the other end of that stretch of road, the Uromastics that exist on those hillsides may have been genetically separated for centuries. We don't know, we have no idea. So, it's some of that morph stuff is an argument about like, where do you draw the line in terms of, okay, should we keep them locality specific? That's not possible with Uromastics. We can't, we don't have enough. We've never gotten enough shipments from one place to keep a whole population locality specific. It doesn't make any sense, but it does make practical sense right now to keep them as separate and as close to each other as we can for not just for long-term propagation reasons, but for the reasons you just mentioned. Uromastics are reclassified on the regular. I had Uromastyx yemenensis that I brought in from Europe several years ago that got confiscated at the border because when yemenensis was reclassified, it was after they'd already brought some into the trade under the name bentai. But when they got split, it split it into 3 different subspecies: yemenensis, shibraki, and bentai. They were all split, but they all used to be bentai, right? And so when they looked at the data at the border, they were like, yemenensis, they've never come to the United States before, yoink. When in reality, it's just because they were reclassified. They're the same animals that were brought in, but they were classified under a different name. So you make a very strong point for that kind of, specification, because, when things get reclassified, we don't want to be having to revamp our projects wholesale just because, well, it turns out the last 10 years, all we've been breeding are hybrids between Ornata and Pepsi presents Ornata, right? Like that's a pain in the ass. And even though our distinctions about classification may be somewhat arbitrary sometimes, it's still something we've got to deal with and reckon with. So I have there's a lot to consider when talking about both morph mutation stuff and hybridization. There's a lot to be considered. Yeah. Cool stuff. We were asking about, were there, you guys got any other Euro questions, or you want me to tell you some of the other weird crap I've got?
Weird crap.
All right.
We're catching up, buddy.
Okay. So, somewhat recently I picked up a couple of the Cuban Nidanoles from Ron, actually. So I got a pair of Anolis smallwood eye, and then I've got a trio of Equestris, which are really cool. And then the moment I can get some of those Podier, I'm going to get them, because those are badass looking lizards. They're wicked bad. I love them. As I said before, previously the things I was really passionate about were collared lizards and chuckwallas and stuff. But unfortunately, I'm not really working with those guys anymore for just a mixture of reasons. But and so now one of the side projects I'm really most interested in is I've got quite a few Xenogama now. So I've got Xenogama taylori and Xenogama batulifera. And I think those are the coolest little shits. They're so small and so bizarre and such cool personalities. The males get those beautiful cobalt blue throats when they're trying to mate. I actually fucked up. I missed 2 clutches this year. And I have currently right now I have one gravid female who's getting ready to lay, and I'm just keeping those fingers crossed, because I was like, man, I gotta get it. I've never bred them before, and so I'm ready to. They're so cool, man. You seen the tails on those things? Those just little, they look like little. They used to be really kept. People thought they were real similar to Uromastyx because they've got spiky tails. These like explosion of spikes at the tail, but so hopefully this female lays a solid. Yeah, there's one of them. Yeah, she actually that's the one that's gravid right now, believe it or not. But she's hopefully she lays a solid clutch and I get some babies, because they also have been sporadically imported, and people have bred them, sure, and in Europe they've been breeding them forever, and a handful of people here in the US have bred them for a few years, but they've kind of fallen off, and they're excellent lizards, and I think they really deserve a lot more attention. So I'm going to try to grow the hell out of these things and get those things going. I also have just a few species of spiny-tailed iguanas. So I have some Tinocera clarki and some Cacrix defensor, and also Tinocera flavidorsalis, which is another really wacky and stunning little spiny-tailed iguana. All 3 of them are small, so they're not, they don't get very large. That's kind of my speed. Other than the Egyptian Uromastyx, I kind of like the lizards on the smaller end of things, because man, I get bit. I hate getting bit, and I hate like feeling like, you know what I mean? I'm a total wiener when it comes to getting bit by lizards. Even the baby Euros, when they bite me, I'm like, I hate it. And I've been bit by my Egyptian Uromastyx, and that's about as much as I can take. He's an asshole. I don't want to get bit by anything else. Because even if they don't break the skin, the pressure that they put down is just absolutely god awful. But I'm still quite new to these Tinocera, though. The defensor, which are Cacrix defensor now, not Tinocera, but those guys and the Clarki and the Flavidorsalis are relatively new for me. But I've always loved them. Yeah, as a defensor, that's a little badass. Super awesome. Cool. Yeah, Yucatan spiny-tailed iguana. That's a rad little bastard. Those are super cool. And the Flavidorsalis are the ones that I think I kind of have the most side psych for, because they're really weird. They're sort of unique among the genus of Tinocera. They're really not very well known, as I understand it. They're one of the more obscure Tinocera species. So I'm really into that. And then I have these other 2 weird little species of just totally lame Rockagamas. Yeah, that's a Flavidorsalis. That's cool as hell. The males, the throats on them will get much peachier and oranger a lot of the times than in that picture. But it's pretty accurate with like the stripes and the green spotting on the back. Really, really badass. But I also, man, so cool. I also have these 2. So I have Sinaiagamas, which are these weird little, Pseudotrapellus sinitus. So this, the males get those bright blue. Yeah, hatch them. It's a cute little man, they're tiny. I think they're kind of tricky. I think they might be a lot like Phrynosoma in some ways. They might eat a lot of ants. So they might require, I don't know that yet, because the babies that I hatched, they're doing really well, but a ton of them just didn't make it. Like you come in one day, like literally I hatched probably a dozen of them and I've got 5 of them left. The 5 that I have are kicking ass, but the others, something went wrong. I don't know if I did something wrong or something like that. And then I also have some of these Agama impalaris. They are Moroccan rock agamas. They are similar in body structure to those red-headed agamas, the Spider-Man agamas that are like running wild in Florida. But they are not quite as gaudy in terms of coloration. I should have a few pictures of those things on my Instagram as well, because they're like they've got like these yellow-orange heads and like this purplish blue body, and then they're really beautiful. And the females have that gravid, that quirk about like a lot of collared lizards do, where when they're gravid, they get these bright orange blotches and red blotching on the back, but only when they're gravid. And so it's a pretty cool little indicator. And I hatched a few clutches of those this year too. Those things are pretty sweet, but primarily those Tinocera and the Xenogama are the non-Uromastics projects that I'm most excited about. Oh, and I have Ackies too, but you gotta love Ackies. Ackies are the best. But I only just got some of those, so I don't know shit about Varanus yet. So eventually, maybe another day, but I don't know. I'm not the one to know. Hopefully she'll lay this next clutch properly. It wasn't her fault. So that bedding that I have her on in the background is it's a clay-based bedding. It's by Exoterra. They make that stuff Stone Desert. It's pretty cool. It holds burrows really well, but unfortunately it doesn't hold moisture very well at all. So sadly, she burrowed plenty, but where she deposited the eggs was just bone dry and she didn't bury them. So unfortunately I screwed up. So now I've got her set up in, like 10 or so inches of topsoil, and she seems to be doing a lot better now. So hopefully in the next couple of days, I'll be able to post a clutch of Xenogama up there. But, yeah, that's about it for my side projects. That's all.
That's still a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of work.
You will be hearing from me when I'm in Denver this year. I think I'll be in Denver maybe 3 times this year, maybe 4.
Oh, no shit. Absolutely. Yeah, man. Come when you're here. Come hang out. Come check out the shop.
Oh, no, I'd love to see it, man. Honestly,
Yeah.
I think I like the kiddie pool, man. I think it looks unique. I think I like the fucking blue. I love everything about it. I think it's a well done setup.
Thank you, man. I even though I was self-conscious about that, I did get a lot of kudos for that. A lot of people were pretty happy with that because they like that it saves money and it's practical and it gives them a lot of space. And I liked it too. It's cool. It's a good idea. I can't take complete credit for it. It was a mixture of me and my old man. I was looking at the pools one day and thinking like, man, I could do something with this if only they were just a little bit taller. And what if I stack them and drill them together? And he was like, oh, you don't even have to do that. He's like, just cut the bottom out of one and flip it over. And I was like, oh shit, you got it. So my dad gets most of the credit for that one, but regardless, it's a cool idea, man. I think it'll be good. And but I think that rock on a roll though, I think that's an underutilized thing that more Euro people should take away from this. I think that's a really good tool that might change the game a little, at least to some degree with the Euros. I don't know. Maybe they won't care.
Well, when we come visit you at your shop, we're
Mm-hmm.
going to do a deep dive video so we can get this all squared away. So
yeah, let's do it, man. Sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm in.
That'll be a good time.
We'll pick up our 6 ornates from you while we're there, and good to go.
Hell yeah, man. I got you guys covered.
So, last question for people who may be looking to buy from you next year.
Mm-hmm.
When is the best time to contact you for babies?
Oh yeah, good question. Okay, so the way I do it is a little bit different. So I tend to operate most of the time on a first come first serve basis, and so what I do is my Euros usually start mating in February and March, and the first eggs are laid at the end of March and into April, and then the first hatchlings are usually sometime around May, sometimes late April if things happen a little bit early. And it's when stuff hatches that's when I start taking like reservations and deposits and stuff like that, because I like things being a first come first serve, and I can't keep a list. I would love to normally keep a waiting list, but it's just that it's kind of impractical. The demand is such that it would be like eight pages long. And then when I finally did hatch them, I'd have to go through that list and contact people and then wait for them to get back to me and see if they even want them and all this other, it's more work. I'm the only person doing all this stuff. Like I don't have any employees. I have an awesome girlfriend, but she's got her own job and thing that she does. So I have to do all this totally by myself. And so by making it a first come first serve thing, it just cuts the work on my end. And it just makes it, in my opinion, it makes it a little bit more fair, at least to some degree. If people who, keeping a list, you could easily just bump the list and put your friend at the top of it or something like that, which, okay. I don't mind making exceptions for my buddies sometimes when the time comes, but, yeah, like you guys and stuff. Yeah, that's fine. But for the most part, I like the first come first serve thing. So if people if they just pay attention to my pages, and whenever I post hatching stuff, that's when I take deposits. It's like, because usually I don't post until after the babies have been out of the eggs for a few days, and I know they're not going to die. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so that way I know how many I have. And what I'll usually do is I'll let about half or 2/3 of the clutch go at that time. And then I hold on to the other third, and I wait until later in the year, because they grow pretty quick in the first 6 months, right? They can get pretty big. And so usually by the time they hit that first 4, 5, 6 months, they're pretty close to being sexable. And so I'll take that last third that I didn't sell, and I'll pick my holdbacks out of that, so that way I can pick the gender of, the ones that I need. And then the extras I'll sell later in the year. I'll usually post them on Instagram. I'll post it up on my page. I'll say, hey, at sometime today, I'm going to throw up an ornate or 5 ornates. And so pay attention, because it's first come first serve. And it works pretty well. I mean, it's crazy, dude. Like I'll point out that the last time I did this, I posted one juvenile male ornate, and I posted in the morning that I was gonna post him up, and I posted the picture and said that he was for sale, and I counted to 8, and someone had messaged me and said, I'll buy it. And before I could delete the post, I got 30 more messages from people like, I want him. I want him. And I'm like, shit, dude, he's gone. So I may have to change what I do in the future, because I just want everybody to like me, man. I'm not trying to piss anybody off, like, and I had, this year was the first year where I had a lot of people get really mad at me for not having what they wanted. And I'm like, bro, you can do the work if you want and breed the Euros, but I only hatched this many. Like that's all I have. If I don't have it, I don't have it. So, I don't know if in the future I'll have to change up the way I do that just to make things easier, because it's now getting to the point when I post anything for sale, the number of inquiries I get is too many. And I can't be on my phone that much, man. Like, we've all seen the social dilemma. We all need to get off social media sometimes, right? So I can't do it the same way. I don't know. Maybe if you guys have suggestions for me, because I think you guys have been in it longer than I have. I'm not sure, but
hire someone. Hire someone.
Oh man, yeah, that'll cost some money, but maybe
animal.
That's not a bad idea. Yeah. That's what my girlfriend keeps telling me to do. She's like, you got to hire somebody and handle your social media for you and shit like that. I'm like, all right, well, if you want to cut their check.
Personally, what I would recommend, and we do it with our collection here, especially with the lizards.
Yeah.
We have everything set up with an e-commerce. We let people know when we're going to put animals on the website, and everyone goes on and they pay on the spot. And when they're gone, they're gone.
Yeah, that's a pretty good idea.
Yeah, it drives traffic to your website, and I know websites aren't necessarily obsolete, but not utilized as much as they should be. But I said, dude, the e-commerce, man, it is going to make your life so much easier. It does all the work. They put in all their information. They pay for it. A lot of times they don't even contact you. They don't even want to talk to you. They just want to know when the animal's on the way.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
I keep that in consideration. That takes a lot off your back, and then it's on them for not going to your webpage.
It's not a bad idea, man. It's a good call. I can look into that for sure. I don't know. It's gonna have to change sometime though, because I can't be the only one answering messages all the time. I feel so bad when somebody's like, I've been looking for an ornate for 4 years and this was my only chance. And I'm like, shit, dude, I really want to give you one, but I don't have it. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I hate that. I really do. But so something will have to change. Hopefully my goals right now, one of my goals over the next, 2 or 3 years is F3, F4, F5, right? And then on top of that, I'm hoping to, the goal obviously is to grow the operation, get more Euros. I'm aiming at somewhere around double where I'm at currently, maybe more, but that depends a lot on, if there's not an apocalypse in next year or something like that, I don't think there will. I'm just saying, who knows? Like, there's a lot of variables in there and stuff, but I'm hoping by 2022, the numbers of ornates should be sufficient to make it so most people can get one if they want it. Unless the demand continues to grow, then it'll just be the way it is.
So what's the size of the collection look like now?
So like all told, I have to recount because all my babies for the year are gone, and so now I just have to count all my holdbacks. But it's somewhere around 65, 70 Uromastics, with most of those being representative of ornates. And then I got several pairs of each species right now. But the ornates ornates and Thomasi are probably the most that I have at the moment, along with Flavofasciata, and then that's not including the side project. So that's just Uromastics and just resident breeders. I don't. I'm trying to aim somewhere around 150 for the Uromastics, and I probably won't continue to work with all the species. So as it stands now, I have kept and managed to hatch every species available to the United States trade, with the notable exception of Uromastyx Egyptia microlepis. I don't have any of those. Those are a beautiful subspecies of Egyptian that just don't have any. It's just, I just haven't done it yet. But I don't think I'm going to continue to work with every single species out there. So I may make the decision sometime soon to reduce that to just, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 species that I just really, really like, or I think are the most ideal candidates for long-term propagation. So like some of the ones that initially come to mind are obviously ornates, Moroccans, Thomasi, Yemenensis, these ones, Egyptians. I think that they're really, really good. They're the right size, the right general temperament, the right colors. Right is a little bit of a weird term, but some of them, you have like, okay, so you have like Uromastyx dispar maliensis and Uromastyx dispar. Mm-hmm. Distinct subspecies. They look almost identical. I mean, yes, there are some obvious differences to those in the know, but they're just not different enough. Like it's just kind of hard to justify, reproducing large numbers of marginally distinct, obscure pet lizards. Now, no, of course, there's definitely the argument to be made, and which is why I've done it so far, that nerds will buy those animals, right? People in the know, they want a representative animal of Maliensis and a representative of Dispar. They're all cool. They're all beautiful. But I think for my own sanity and to open up, I want to encourage other people to pick up the species the ones that I decide not to hang on to. I'd really hope that other people think I'm wrong and breed those animals. It's just that I just can't justify it at the moment for myself. So I might regret it in 10 years, but I will probably reduce the total number of species that I have, but not the total number of animals, if that makes sense.
No, it does.
What's your average production look like?
Well, so the last 3 or 4 years, it was hovering around 150. 120 to 150.
Wow.
This was my best year yet. I managed, I hatched right around 200 and 210 Uromastyx. So that was super cool. I was really, really happy for that. And that was 210 peppered with a handful of failed clutches too. I had some ocelota clutches that went bad because they were produced by females that had been recently imported. So recent import female Uromastics that do well enough to breed in the same season usually lay duds. I think it's probably got something to do with just residual stress left over from the importation process that they just haven't gotten. I don't know, something like that, something to do with stress from that whole process, because it's usually the second season. I think this is true of tortoises too, actually. I've heard people say the same thing of tortoises. I don't know for sure, but and so if I hadn't had a handful of clutches fail, it might have been closer to 250. But that's the failures for you, right? And so I'm hoping to hit roughly the same numbers next year. It depends a little bit on some circumstances. You know, this winter is probably going to be a little more harsh than the Euros are used to, because my shop, I just moved into that shop. I was operating out of my basement before that. And so the winter temperatures are probably going to be just a little bit more harsh this go around, but that might just lead to better production next year. I'm not sure. So I'm hopeful that I can have another good season, and hopefully it will be more than just Euros. It'll be Euros and Xenogama and some random Tinocera that are really badass. So
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm sure Ben and Ryan are rooting for you so they could buy at least one animal.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'll help you guys. I'll make it happen for you guys. It's fine. You know, Euros are the best, man. You guys will dig it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
man.
Yeah.
Well, did we peak? Was that a peak right there?
I think we
Might
hit
have
it,
been,
man.
Take one deep
I
breath.
think we hit it.
Yeah, it might have been it.
Your
Hey,
bankroll.
that's a good hit, man. You know, that's an
Yeah.
hour longer than we planned on this going, and I'm sure Ron's
Oh,
going to really
damn.
appreciate it.
I hope so, man. Yeah, he's I look up to that guy a lot, so I hope hope it's an enjoyable interview for folks. I am a very talkative person, but I don't always know if I'm being concise. Sometimes I can ramble and rant a little bit, so I hope it was at least digestible.
This was all good info, man.
This is probably one of our more informative podcast. I mean, really, the majority of this was educational. I mean, really.
Oh, excellent.
It was
That's
all
awesome.
Uromastics. Like, we didn't have to change gears. We didn't have to do anything. I mean, it was a
Yeah.
solid 2+ hours of Uromastic information. And that's
Cool.
honestly the most Uromastic information probably out there at the moment. Like,
I hope
I've
so.
definitely learned a lot.
Cool, man. That's good. I'm really glad to hear. I appreciate you guys having me on. This was super cool. I really like this. Hopefully we can do it again in the future. Oh, dude, don't mind my cat.
Hey, man, I'm into cats, buddy. Don't ever apologize for cats.
He's a legit leopard, and he's an asshole. He's a real jerk, but he's a beautiful Bengal, so we put up with him for a little while, you know.
It's all part of it, buddy.
Cool.
Right.
Right on.
Well, what do you think? Ben, you brought us in. Ryan taking us out, or what's the plan? Wait, did you have a question,
Right
bud,
on.
or you just...
I'm saying,
Yeah.
right, take us out.
He's tossing it over to me. I got it right over here.
Cool.
Thank you so much, man, for coming on.
Yeah.
It's been a great interview. So much information about Uromastics. I'm trying to tell Ben not to spend money on any more animals, but we're obviously going to dump another couple grand into some freaking new species.
It's the right thing to do.
All for you, brother.
Thanks.
Guys, if you like this interview, make sure you go follow this guy on his page. Arids Only. It's awesome animals. Like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. Show us some love. Show him some love. Tell Dave he needs to do his mustache up. I mean, come on, put a little effort in.
That was rough.
And we'll see y'all next time.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Cool.
It's good.
Word.
Love you,
Hey.
Dave.